Good morning, it's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 2nd of July. Today, new measures to crack down on disruptive protests. Police will now have powers to stop people...
Or to move them on.
Well, move them on, yes, and sort of slow walks in the streets.
And a fifth night of rioting in France. Pressure mounts on President Macron as he cancels a visit to Germany.
And a European space telescope has been launched on a million-mile journey to map the dark universe. What is that, you wonder? Well, we'll find out from Andy Lound a little bit later on.
And, of course, as always, we'll bring you the latest weather.
Well, it's going to be a nice warm day, I predict, because it's
cloudy
red
or
hot.
sunny, though, that's what I
It's
want.
red hot here already and a bit humid. But anyway, we have all the details from the Met Office. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
And it's all a bit of a rough and ready start today. I blame myself.
Why?
Because I was chatting to our makeup lady this morning about we went looking for a dog after the show yesterday. It's a big thing in the Dixon household, dog shopping. I went to a lovely breeder yesterday.
And a particular sort of dog?
A Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Beautiful looking animal.
They're beautiful, quite big, but they are absolutely beautiful.
Quite big, very big.
So I was busy talking to the makeup lady and suddenly realised that it was about 2 minutes to 6.
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's a bit of a... Because we're normally in here about quarter
I
to 2,
know,
aren't we?
it's been a late day. You get days like that, don't you, where you just can't get out of bed. And then when you do get out of bed, you can't get going. And it's one of those mornings today. I don't know why.
It is a little bit, isn't it? But it's all part of the fun. It's a
I want to
Sunday,
know,
a lazy Sunday.
Everybody at home is going to want to know.
Oh, yeah, go on.
If you're going to get a dog, what about Timmy, the cat?
Ah, Timmy, now, she's taken special measures on this one, because Timmy's the cat, about 14, rescue cat.
No, Timmy the cat.
Yeah, they do, yeah. But apparently, Ridgebacks are very good with cats. And this particular breed, her dogs are very placid. They've got a lovely temperament. But as long as they're introduced to the cat when they're a puppy...
Yes.
And of course, they'll be crated and everything, so the cat gets to make sure they are in charge.
Yes, because cats need to know that.
Yeah, so Timmy will be in charge, and apparently that's not a problem. Should be absolutely fine.
So it's important that, unlike going to a rescue or something, that it's important that it's a puppy.
It's got to be a puppy.
So Timmy will always feel rather superior.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And then probably won't notice as the dog gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Bigger, yeah. And of course, the nice thing is Timmy goes on the bed and Timmy goes on the sofa and the dog will
Sits
not
on the windowsill.
Yeah, and the dog will not be allowed to do those things. So Timmy's got areas where he can...
You've already thought this right through.
You can't have the dog on the bed. There wouldn't be any room for us.
Well, no, there wouldn't, because it's a big dog. But when are you going to get it?
September.
Ah.
September. So they were born...
Summer of anticipation.
They were born 2 days ago.
Oh, is that right? Oh, how lovely.
So there you go. So that's my news for you this morning.
OK, well, that's a good one to ask you as well. How do cats get on with dogs and dogs get on with cats? Because my little Ellie, I always think that when I'm here, for instance, I'm away for quite a few hours, it would be nice if she had somebody to talk to.
A bit of company.
Yeah. And I don't know whether I should get another dog, but would a cat work?
Don't know. Depends on the breed, depends on the temperament, depends on the cat, of course. It's all...
I think she'd rather like it.
Do you?
As if I got a kitten. Yeah.
If you got a kitten, I think an age gap probably helps.
Yeah. I think she'd like it. She'd have somebody to talk to when I'm away.
If you've got any pictures of your dog and cat together...
how did they get on?
That would be nice.
And how did you introduce them to each other? Or did they grow up together? Love to know all of that stuff. Please, send us some pictures. It's a day for pretty pictures today, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? It's a Sunday.
Exactly.
gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, let's tell you about new measures to crack down on disruptive protests. They come into force today, including an expansion of police powers and a new criminal offence of tunnelling.
Authorities will now have powers to disperse static protests, a common tactic of groups like Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion, where they glue themselves to the pavement or something.
Yeah, they just refuse to move. Let's talk to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley. Peter, really good to see you this morning. What do you make of all of this? Obviously protests have been going on for time immemorial. Are these sort of changes something we need?
These laws, sadly, are a reflection upon the liberal, fluffy and woke police leadership, which has quite frankly not used existing powers and has allowed protest groups to cause so much disruption by the slow walking and other tactics. If the police were more robust and they used the existing laws, then the Home Secretary would not be forced into a corner and would not have to bring about these new laws, which are simply designed to make the police do their job.
The trouble is, some of these, the way protesters are protesting nowadays, they've thought it through. It makes the police look stupid and unable to do their jobs properly, doesn't it? It actually makes them a laughingstock.
Yes, but there is so much existing legislation that the very simple laws, such as behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, which could be used if the police leadership was stronger, was more robust, and was actually on the side of every working man and woman in the country. For example, this slow walking, which has been a plague upon our major cities, particularly London. There is a raft of public order legislation, behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, loads of laws which, if the police had done their job and got rid of these people out of the roads so that people could go about their daily business, then there would be no need for these new laws. But the police have simply failed us all. So the Home Secretary has had to do something, and so we see these new laws coming into power today.
What I don't understand, Peter, with all of this, and you see it with various... We've seen protests where people are getting pints of milk in supermarkets and pouring them on the floor, or, as you say, walking in front of vehicles very slowly. If we did that as individual members of the public, we'd just be carted off, wouldn't we? I mean, you get arrested on the spot, so I don't understand why, if you're a protest group, you somehow get away with it.
But you've hit on such an important point, and this is where the police have been repeatedly failing us. Well, today, it might be a pint of milk, it might be a milkshake that is thrown over a protester, but I don't want these things to escalate. What might be a milkshake today could turn out to be, for example, and I dread the thought, but it could be battery acid tomorrow, and so things could escalate. But I make no apology for reinforcing the fact that the police have been too fluffy over all of this. They have simply failed to do their job, and that is a failing of police leadership, with so many laws that could have been applied to get these protesters out of the road and allow the traffic to flow and people to go about their business. That hasn't happened, and so, of course, the Home Secretary, who I'm sure is as frustrated as so many people that I hear from, has had to bring in these new laws.
But what about the people who say, well, this is actually damaging the right to protest? Because that in itself is important, isn't it?
It is a fundamental cornerstone of being a part of a flagship democracy. And of course, the police understand that. It's not so many years ago that the police marched on Parliament themselves. But fluffy, woke, liberal police leadership has failed us all. Police officers have not been robust. They have not been supported by the leadership to get these people out of the road lawfully, robustly, legitimately. They have facilitated so much of this protest, to the frustration of the great British public, who have watched the police walking side by side, facilitating this disruption instead of quite simply getting on with their job.
Well, these new measures come into force today, but the leaders that you just mentioned there, the police leaders, are still there, the fluffy ones, as you call them. So is anything going to change? Is it going to help the situation?
I sincerely hope so, because I've noticed a particular ramping up of the anti-Just Stop Oil social media chat this week. And we've seen milk or milkshakes being thrown over protesters. We've seen clips from other countries whereby these protesters these protesters have been physically removed by members of the public. We don't want that to happen. I do not want the public taking the law into their own hands. So I would urge the public to step aside, let the police do their job, and I would also urge the police to grow a spine, to do their job, to allow people to get to hospital appointments, to get their kids to school on time, and for people to go to work, all the other things that we need to do every day of our lives, and do their job. Get these people out of the road, get people to stop tunnelling, for example, which applies to so many of these laws today, so that people can just go about their daily business.
Peter, what's the difference between, you talk about the fluffy leadership, but what's the difference between the leadership's view on all of this in the police and rank and file?
I think, well, that's a very, very good question. I think some of this woke fluffiness has, sadly, filtered down to the rank and file. But if the rank and file are paying close attention to social media in regards to these disruptive protests, then they will see just how angry the public are, just how much people want to be able to go about their business. And at the end of the day, there's a 200-year-old principle which was brought about by Sir Robert Peel that said the police are the public and the public are the police. Well, if the police are the public, listen to what the public are saying. Get these people out of the streets and let everybody get on with their daily business.
Peter, really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. If you've got a thought on that, gbviews@gbnews.com. I feel it may turn into the Peter Blexley fan club.
Yes,
a little bit.
Well, I think we are fed up with all of these causes, and many of them are very, very sincere and good causes. You know, we sympathise, and many of us believe in what they believe in, but not the way they're doing it. They're just alienating us all.
Well, but in a way, I don't necessarily have an issue with people slow walking and blocking traffic, and although that's frustrating, I don't have an issue with people doing that, as long as the police they're then called and immediately move them on.
Yes, exactly.
Because I mean,
the police can do something about it.
But it's the idea that they turn up and do it, and then the police stand there and watch them.
Yeah.
Or say, "Would you like a cup of tea?" or whatever. That's the issue.
Yes, we have had instances of real wokery, haven't we? What is tunnelling?
I guess it's just digging a tunnel.
Is it?
I mean, I don't know.
I mean, Peter clearly knew what it was.
Yes.
But I don't think I'm going to have to...
I have to Google it.
Yeah.
Tunnelling. I don't know. I just thought it was digging a tunnel somewhere, but quite how that's...
No.
No, I don't know.
No.
If you know, gbviews@gbnews.com.
If you Google it, you just get a lot of sort of...
Pictures of tunnels.
Exactly. Yeah.
Could be worse.
What is tunnelling? It's like kettling, you know. There are all sorts
kettling,
of, there are all sorts of new words that come into force when you talk about crowd control.
But
if you know what tunnelling is, let us know.
Yeah, as I say, I don't have people can do what they want. You know, like they can if they want to throw paint, let them throw paint.
I don't know about that.
But there's got to be they've got to face the consequences of it.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
You know, whereas at the minute people are doing all these things and nothing's
But when they glue
happening.
themselves to pavements and stop ambulances going past, that's a problem, and it's caused huge problems. I think in some cases it's probably even caused deaths.
They just need to be dragged off.
Yeah,
frankly,
and
prosecuted.
we're a country of that respects the right to protest. Of course we do, but there's protesting and protesting, isn't there? It's what's acceptable.
Yeah. Let us know what you think. It's 14 minutes past 6. Let's bring you up to date with what else is going on today.
Health officials have raised concerns over people being bombarded with gambling adverts after record high numbers have asked for help for gambling addiction in England. Nearly 1,400 patients were referred last year. 7 new specialist clinics are being opened as a result of the high demand for care.
Rioting across France appeared less intense last night. Police using tear gas once again. 200 people were arrested nationwide. That's a lot, but it's less than a quarter of the number from Friday. The Justice Minister says 30% of the thousands who've been arrested since Tuesday are under the age of 18. Violence spread across the country after a 17-year-old was killed by a police officer during a traffic stop in Paris on Tuesday.
Twitter has applied a temporary limit to the number of tweets users can read in a day, as thousands are tonight reporting problems accessing the site. Owner Elon Musk has announced via Twitter that unverified accounts are limited to 600 posts a day, while verified accounts can read up to 6,000. I think if you're reading 6,000 tweets a day,
you should want to be doing something else.
You've got a problem.
Yeah. Well, 600's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
I would have thought. It depends what they mean by reading. If you just sort of scroll through...
Oh, I see. If you just sort of...
And you've got a lot of... Yeah, I don't know. Does it...
But some people engage with it far too much, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
They read every tweet and they
Yeah,
care.
they do.
They care about it.
Yes, you've got to... I'll tell you what I enjoy doing, because you can imagine we get a bit of stick from some woke lefties. And the nice thing is, I don't mind people having a comment. It's when they're abusive, and they get really abusive. So what I like to do is I mute them, because then they can keep on... They don't know that I'm not seeing it.
So it's not like...
So it's like they're shouting into the wind.
Yeah, so it's not like blocking them, because they know they've been blocked.
They've been blocked. But if you mute them, they just keep on... Let them keep on going, and I don't see a word of it. Yeah. It's quite satisfying, that.
Yes, because you know they're putting the effort in, but you're not even caring.
No. Never see it. So it's quite a nice little trick, actually. Anyway, that's just my little hint for you. I'm no Twitterati. I don't go on it very much, really. Anyway, there you go. And you don't go on it at all, Dan?
Not anymore, no. Not since the COVID.
Yeah.
Because I said I tweeted how proud I was to be getting my jab.
And you got a lot of stick.
And I got so much abuse. I just thought, I'm giving all of this up.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just not worth it.
No, it's not.
Anyway, senior ministers are predicting a total clear-out of Conservative MPs before the next election.
It's a thought, isn't it? Citing the Tories' continuing drop in popularity, party sources claim that many more will join the dozens who have already announced that they won't be standing.
Let's talk to political commentator Peter Spencer. Morning to you, Peter.
Good morning to you both. We're tunneling away here, having a lovely time here.
This is a very odd thing, isn't it? The idea that actually a vast majority of current Tory MPs is just going to say, I've had enough.
Well, I mean, it's not really to be wondered at when you look at the opinion polls, which tell us that the Conservatives are in for an almighty kick in the wherevers come the next general election. It's the Labour lead is up there in the mid-20s and shows no sign of relenting. And indeed, there are 3 by-elections coming up in which will be looked at very carefully. These are the by-elections in the wake, of course, of the Boris Johnson resignation. There will be a 4th one, Nadine Dorries, in Mid-Bedfordshire, which is at some point, which is very much a safe Conservative seat. But a new opinion poll suggests that they will lose that as well, which suggests to me that the rats deserting the sinking ship are actually the smartest passengers on the voyage.
They're smart, yes, tactically, but it doesn't mean very much, does it? You hope and believe that people want to become an MP so that they can change things, so that they can serve the public. And if they're just leaving now because they just don't believe in it anymore, then it doesn't say much for their character, does it?
Well, it doesn't say much for the mood of the Conservative Party, that's for sure. I mean, the Conservative Parliamentary Party collectively actually comes across at present as a bunch of tired and teasy kids who haven't had enough sleep and want something to eat, and they're thoroughly browned off with everything. And they look at what's likely to happen at the general election and they think, OK, I'm likely to lose. There's no such thing as a safe Conservative seat. I'm likely to lose mine unless I'm right up there in the stratosphere. And there is a logic to this. I mean, you talk about character, you talk about self-interest, but if you if you decide you're going to pull out, the next job is to try to find another job. You're in a much, much stronger position to find some alternative employment if you apply from a position of strength, that's to say as a member of parliament, as opposed to some yesterday's person who's on the scrap heap. When you're in that situation, and I've been there myself and I've been made redundant a couple of times, you're nobody. And so, you know, I mean, these guys, they're not sort of talking about people at retirement age. They want something else to do and they want to earn some money. And so it is logical that they're going to try to find something else to do. And it is logical, therefore, they're going to pull out while they're still not exactly ahead, but not exactly on the scrap heap either.
And looking from the party perspective, Peter, and I suppose it's looking on the basis that they are going to lose a lot of seats, which is a presumption, though
yes,
maybe not an inaccurate one. Is it good news for the party then that come, well, several years down the line, they're actually going to have a whole set of new blood of people who are wanting to be Tory MPs? I mean, a full refresh, which is perhaps what they need.
Be a good thing.
I dare say so. Of course, that full refresh would also involve a great many people who have never done the job before, who aren't battle-hardened, who don't sort of get how politics works. So it's a bit of a swings and roundabouts thing there. But you just look at they're reading the rooms, and the fact is the Conservatives have been in power for 13 years, with a bit of help from the Lib Dems earlier on, and people are I suspect that the public collectively are looking at the situation where they have a cost of living crisis. The NHS is in a pretty shambolic state. Rishi Sunak has made his 5 pledges, very few of which, if any, are likely to come to fruition. Notably, inflation, which was going to be cut down to a bare minimum. Now that doesn't look particularly likely. Now, while Sir Keir Starmer doesn't exactly tickle the nation's sweet spot, let's not mess around here, he does at least seem, albeit a little boring, very safe. And the Labour Party clearly is not riven with anything like the same sort of splits and turbulence as the Conservative Party. And so I think there's a widespread sense, which of course is reflected in the polls, for God's sake, let's give the other lot a go.
Gosh, it's like conceding the next general election almost, isn't it?
Yeah.
Peter, thanks very much.
Yeah,
absolutely. It just feels that way, doesn't it? Very, very difficult election for the Tories to face, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Thanks, Peter. I tell you what, though, I don't know if I disagree with the problem of having a whole load of new people who haven't got any experience, because you had that with Labour in 97, didn't you? In Blair's Babes and all the rest of it all came in.
Experience almost counts against you at the moment, didn't it? Because of the last few years, but and because of all of the things that have or have not been done, that you get that held against you if you've got experience, whereas fresh faces might be something to believe in again. But maybe it takes time for fresh faces to appear.
We shall see. I mean, we've got a year to go, probably, or something like that.
It's going to go so quickly now, isn't it?
You never know. We might have 2% inflation and the economy booming, and we might all be rolling in cash.
Yeah. and all these MPs who are resigning will actually maybe, regret it.
Well, they'll probably get more money in the private sector.
Yeah, they will.
Some of them will.
They'll do well, yeah.
Oh, dear. Anyway, let us know what you think, as always. Still ahead, Spurs versus local residents. And the winner takes over valuable greenbelt space. We'll tell you more. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain.
Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
6:25. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Loads have been in touch on
already.
Policing.
Yeah. And tunnelling. John says tunnelling is where protesters dig under the roads or infrastructure to prevent the use. Just Stop Oil did this at Kingsbury's oil depot to prevent the movement of petrol and oil tankers.
Darren says no one has the right to walk slow in the road. These people are disrupting traffic, delaying people from going to work and ambulances. I sort of agree and sort of disagree. I sort of think people can protest however they want. It's just they shouldn't be allowed to just continue walking
because you
slow
can
in
be
the road.
done for jaywalking, can't you?
Well, yeah, I suppose so.
Walking
so it's
irresponsibly on the pavement or on the road. That's jaywalking, and you can be done for that.
So as we're showing now, they're walking slowly, disrupting the traffic. So I sort of think, well, fine if you want to try it, but then these police officers need to be dragging them off the road rather than just having a little chit-chat.
And David in Lincolnshire has got in touch. He says, I'm a retired senior police officer and I fully agree with what's already been said by Peter Blexley. The legislation already exists to deal with these protesters. It's the police who didn't enforce it properly.
Yeah, Andy in Dorset says protesters have nothing to fear. We haven't got a police force. They're just social workers in uniform.
I think a lot of policemen feel that way, policemen and women, yeah.
Yeah.
And Derek says, I think there's a generation split on this subject. It seems the majority of under-30s support the protests.
Maybe, I don't know.
I support the cause, but I don't know whether they support the way they're protesting.
That's the thing. I think what has infuriated us all is that the more they've been less policed, the more the protesters are going out and doing it because they just think, well, we can now.
But I think the police are also really worried about being accused of overdoing it. And it's a very difficult one to police. I think it must be... in fact, we'd love to hear from you if you are a police officer at the moment. It must be very frustrating for you, too, knowing what to do and where to draw the line.
Half the thing, back in the day, if you were a protester, it was almost like a badge of honour if you got arrested. Whereas none of these lot ever seem to get arrested, really, do they?
No, not anymore.
No, not the same way, anyway.
Get carried off the cricket pitch.
Yes.
In a wonderful manner, but that's about it.
Yeah. Anyway, keep your thoughts coming through on that. gbviews at gbnews.com. Now, campaigners are taking legal action to try to stop Tottenham Hotspur from building a women's football academy in a park in North London.
Yeah, locals are seeking a judicial review of Enfield Council's decision to hand a 25-year lease to Spurs if its proposals win the planning permission.
Yeah, people there say the plans will see 60% of the Greenbelt parkland used by the football club. Our London reporter Lisa Hartle has more.
Everything you can see right round this way for whatever it is, 270 degrees, will be football pitches.
This is the part of the park campaigners say is under threat of Tottenham Hotspur building a women's football academy on. They say 60% of Whitewebb's Park in Enfield, North London, will be off limits to the public if Spurs are given planning permission. Enfield Council agreed to a 25-year lease in October 2021.
So Spurs are paying £2 million over 25 years. And to put that into context, they're talking about selling Harry Kane for £100 million in one deal. Tottenham are getting one of the most beautiful parks in the whole of the southeast of England for next to nothing. and Enfield Council are just ignoring the objections of the public.
Local residents trying to stop the plans have so far raised £18,000 to take legal action against the council.
The land since 1931, as I said, has been open space for the people of Enfield, and anybody in Enfield could come and join it. The terms of the lease were that you could put in sporting facilities, outdoor recreational facilities, but they had to be open for all. What Spurs want to put in here is facilities covering a large part of the area for an elite squad of footballers. If you or I wanted to go and kick a ball around on this, I don't think we'd be allowed to.
The park is home to several species of bats, butterflies and other wildlife.
It is the most amazing piece of wilded countryside that we all love to use, and any time you can come over here and you'll see people running, cycling, horse riding, picnicking, families. During COVID it was the place everyone came to. London is all about clean air. I mean, the Mayor of London wants us all to obviously pay this huge amount of money not to drive cars that aren't suitable, and yet here are Enfield Council trying to cut down trees and get rid of grass that are giving oxygen to the area.
For some, the park is a place of solitude.
Being able to walk around this park really improves your mental health, and it's such a lovely, peaceful place that you can go walk to and meet people, and we've made lots of friends coming here as well, and it's just a lovely place, and people come from all over the borough to here. It's not just for local people, it's from all people from all over Enfield and outside Enfield.
I spoke to some Spurs supporters to see what they made of the plans.
Absolutely disgustingly greedy money. This place should be left for people like us, these people with their dogs. Spurs can go and do. I love Spurs, I support Spurs, but not in this. They're greedy and they need to go find somewhere else.
This is the only countryside we've got around here.
My dad used to come over here when I was 5 or 6 years old. Well, how dare they take this? How dare they?
Both Spurs and Enfield Council declined to comment at this time. Lisa Hartle, GB News, London.
Oh dear.
I'd like to hear from the council and Spurs to get their perspective on it, because you look at that and you just go, well, you can't do it. Surely. It's the only big green space they've got in the area.
It's a very, very built-up area, Enfield, and they need their green spaces, what they've got. Yeah.
Yes, doesn't sit well with me,
That's the trouble. I mean, this isn't housing, obviously. This is... and you wonder why they can't have the Women's Academy with the land they've already got.
Yeah. Why do they need a separate one? I don't know, but it doesn't seem quite right to me. But you may have a view, in which case let us know. Especially if you sort of think it's a good thing and they should carry on with it, because it's nice to get a different perspective. Look, we've got lots of other stories making the headlines in the Sunday papers. We'll bring them to you very shortly. This is Breakfast.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
.35 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
You won't believe what we've just been talking about. Actually, you would never believe what we talk about during the breaks. But we've been talking about dogs and cats because you are shopping
getting
for
a dog.
You're getting a little dog. Well, it will start little, but it's going to get big. Yeah, because it's going to. It's a
ridgeback or a decent ridgeback, so it'll end up like.
Yeah.
That's not going to be little.
That big.
So the question was, how do you introduce it to Timmy?
Yes.
And what's Timmy going to think? Because Timmy's the cat who's been there years.
Yeah. Well, apparently, fine. If you introduce them to a dog, a ridgeback at least when they're a puppy, they're fine. They're fine. So Timmy will have to get used to it, but the dog will be fine.
Yeah.
But the ridgebacks are very good with cats that they grow up with.
Yeah. So we were wondering, if you've got a cat and a dog, how do they get on? Do they automatically get on, or do they just leave each other well alone?
Or do they cuddle up together? That's what we like. Pictures of them sleeping together and all that. That's
send
what
us
I
your
like.
pictures, please. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, the Mail on Sunday's splash this morning reads, Woke Met ban badge tribute to fallen officers. Now, that's police being banned from wearing a blue Union Jack symbol because the bosses claim it's anti-trans.
Oh, for heaven's sake. The Sunday Express reports on taxpayer cash being used to fund open borders activists. The headline there, Rwanda scheme foiled by £1.5 billion of your money.
Daily Star Sunday, boozed up hornets on the rampage.
That's the one that worries me.
Oh, Britain is facing an invasion of alcoholic Asian hornets. Yeah,
Hornets are bad enough, but if they're boozed up, that's even worse.
I wouldn't worry too much,
no,
to be honest.
Front page of The Times has a picture of a French waiter putting out a fire during the ongoing riots there.
He's doing it in a very calm manner.
He does look very calm.
On the Sunday Telegraph, George gets a slice of the action at Lord's. There he is eating pizza along with his dad and the Prime Minister.
Should we go through what else is in the papers today? Let's, with the editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and political consultant Emma Burnell. And it's lovely to see you both.
Hello.
You've got a cat or a dog?
I've got a cat who looks very like Timmy, actually, but she's a girl.
Right, but you haven't got a dog as well?
No, but both my parents and my sister have good dogs that I regularly go out for walks with.
So does the cat know them?
No, they're not allowed in my flat because it's Smudge's flat, really.
Yes, yeah, that's cats for you. What about you?
I've neither, unfortunately.
Neither?
No,
No,
I'm not
OK.
allowed to.
No, it's far too much trouble.
I had both growing up. My mother went through a very, very brief Earth Mother phase, during which we acquired 4 cats and 2 dogs.
Oh, right.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
That's a lot.
See, I wonder whether my little Ellie would actually like a cat for company. Because it wouldn't be so...
But the cat would be in
a problem for
charge.
me. The cat would be in... I don't mind the cat being in charge.
Ellie might, though.
She might, yeah.
We'll see.
It's a thought.
Cats are always in charge.
Plus, the other moan that I was having during the break is that Ellie is white and she goes out for a walk and comes back green if they've just been mowing the lawn, mowing the grass on the common, or just filthy, filthy muddy. And so nobody ever told me, particularly if you get a white dog, you spend half your time washing her.
Yeah. So what else have you got to do?
Well, exactly, yeah. And the trouble is, bathing her, she's very good, she will be bathed, but I end up soaked as well, because every so often she just shakes.
Yeah.
It goes everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, well, there you go.
Anyway, if you've got any pet problems, get in touch.
Tom, let's have a look at the Mail on Sunday. What is this deal with this badge that police want to wear to their fallen officers that they now can't?
Yeah, I mean, this is a ridiculous story. I mean, this badge is referred to generally as the thin blue line. People might have seen police officers wearing it, this black and white Union flag with the thin blue line going through it, excuse me. And many people might not even realise what that's in reference to, but as you were saying, is about fallen officers and so on. But the police who were policing Pride yesterday in London in particular were told not to wear it because of this claim that it's anti-trans.
Why would it be anti-trans?
There's a lot of dot connecting going on here, so bear with me. But essentially, in America, there was a movement following the Black Lives Matter movement called the Blue Lives Matter movement, which had a very similar symbol. That then got hijacked, apparently, by some far-right groups or whatever, but that wasn't even the original meaning of it. As a consequence of that, it's seen as just hateful and bigoted in general by some people. What I think most
it's
grates
a
about...
Union flag in blue.
Also, I refuse to believe that this was the consequence of a group of Pride organisers, gay people, trans people, whatever, getting together and say, we're really upset by this. I'm sure this is another case, which always happens, of someone taking offence on behalf of someone else. And then as a consequence of that, you get ridiculous stories like this, and you get a lot of people within the police force naturally very irritated.
Well, the police are very irritated.
What's wrong with this?
And actually, the problem is it then generates anti-gay and anti-trans sentiment, which wouldn't necessarily otherwise be there and shouldn't be there. I can't imagine anyone objecting to that.
It would be fun to find out who actually raised the objection in the first place.
And it's often, if it's anyone at all, it's one or two people who are just taken overly seriously, and as a result, you end up, tarring everyone with one brush. It's ridiculous.
Well, and it's also, and we see this on both sides, left and right, and the more extreme ends of both, that importation of American politics and trying to fit it to British politics when it actually doesn't. There are very, very different issues. So, for example, the bills that are happening in the United States in various Republican-led areas are really quite sort of viciously anti-trans, viciously anti-LGBT rights. Whereas over here, the debate's a lot more subtle, a lot more nuanced, and in fact not as clearly left-right divided either. So it's really, it just, as Tom said, there were so many jumps that you had to take from this is a badge about some police officers who've been killed on duty in the UK with a UK flag on it and a blue line, to, oh, it might look a little bit like something that they wear in the States, which might also then have different connotations. And it's like,
no.
Stop importing your morality from the United States and start thinking about how these things work here and in our own political discussions.
It's not as if the thin blue line is a new concept over here, is it?
Well, I think someone should tell Ben Elton, because he wrote that 20 years ago.
Yes, exactly.
Brilliant show, that.
Right, Emma, if we go to the Sunday Express, this big fight against the Rwanda scheme is being funded by you and me.
Well, again, there's been some dots being drawn here, because actually, if you read the story, some of the organisations they're talking about include the UNHCR, which is not one of the participants in this court case. It has a view on the Rwanda scheme as to whether it's workable, right, and has every right to that view. But that's not what it's being funded for. It's being, it will be running schemes that help the UK to manage different things around migrants and asylum, because that's its job.
So basically, the story is saying that £1.5 billion is going to groups who oppose the asylum seekers to Rwanda scheme.
Yes.
And so it's taxpayers' money, and that's their
Some of it's taxpayers' money, some of it's National Lottery money, so it's not even all coming directly from government grants.
National Lottery money's going to that, is it?
Well, no, not, I don't think to the UNHCR, but to Refugee Council, I think, is one of them. So there are charities that are there to help with refugee issues who will take a view on this.
You don't want to defund the Refugee Council.
Exactly.
They do a lot of good work.
So, again, this is a lot of overreach, I think, in terms of, linking it directly to the court cases against Rwanda.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, it's good to have that explained. To the Sunday Telegraph, Tom, pylons. Apparently, I didn't know people still objected to pylons, because I know they're ugly, but they are everywhere and have been for decades.
Yeah, and they are necessary. I mean, I suppose this story is tying into the question about how do you get to net zero. So this is obviously something that the government is committed to, the Labour government are committed to it, even on a faster timetable. But there's all these questions about if we're going to switch to electric cars, for instance, we're going to need more electricity than we do currently. We're going to need more infrastructure to transport it. They've worked out that between now and 2040, we need to be able to generate. We're generating 14 gigawatts of energy from offshore wind at the moment. They want that to go up to 50. That's just one measure. And so there's been discussion around how are we going to build the infrastructures to support this. the discussions inside government around essentially loosening up planning rules so that you could overcome local objections to these kinds of things very quickly.
That's what I was thinking,
We have these, they call them moles now, don't they, that set off and they dig and they drag all the cables through. And
because pylons are... It's a shame that we're still in the business of building pylons, isn't it?
I mean, in so many different ways, you do feel like the infrastructure in general is creaking in so many different ways. I mean, I think net zero is a complete mistake, particularly in the current climate that we find ourselves in, so to speak, in terms of sky-high energy prices and all the rest of it. But we do need to plough resources into infrastructure, into energy production. I would just rather it was things like nuclear rather than things like offshore wind. But I think there is that problem with the fact that, you know, you do have to find a way of getting past these objections, because whatever path we choose to take in terms of building up this country in terms of energy and whatever, that will take building things.
Yeah,
and how do you get around that?
You're going to get much less pushback on a nuclear power plant than you would against an electricity pylon.
And that's the big problem that the Tories never managed to get around, whether it's in terms of questions like energy infrastructure, whether it's in terms of like just house building. Like, how do you bring people with you so that it's not being imposed upon them, but at the same time you manage to
can't do it, as you say,
overcome that sort of
people
NIMBYism.
don't want nuclear power stations. So the alternative is let's build a few windmills. It's on one extreme to the other. They don't want those either. And they don't want.
No, we don't want pylons.
No, and you know, we say we don't want pylons, but our steel industry would be like crying out in gratitude for us increasing from 40 to 50%. You know, I think that's gigawatts rather. I think there are lots of places that will really benefit from. Us going for net zero in this way, investing in bringing that into the UK industry and reindustrialising a lot of the UK, remanufacturing. If you look at what Biden's done in America, it's been, instead of focusing on the kind of the green message, it's about American jobs. And I think the same thing can happen here.
It's a different way of looking at it entirely.
Exactly. They put it through all of these measures to completely change America's infrastructure and energy mix, and called it the Inflation Reduction Act, and made it about jobs. And it's and their inflation has gone down. Unfortunately, ours less so.
It's a good spin to put on it. If you make it all about British jobs, and suddenly you get people behind.
Well,
it
you really would. It would change people's minds.
Emma, happy Russia Day.
Yes. It seems that some people were celebrating Russia Day in ways that you wouldn't expect them to.
There was a Russia
I didn't
Day.
know there was a Russia Day.
I mean, Russia Day is big in Russia, surprisingly. And I believe it's a celebration of the establishment of the modern Russian state.
Right, OK, fair enough.
So it's... there was a party held by Putin's envoy to the UK, who is banned from the Westminster estate. And this party was attended by two Conservative peers, Lord Skidelsky and Lord Balfe.
Why would they think that's a good idea under the current circumstances?
I mean, you tell me, Stephen, because I can't see any justification. Like, there are... I am sure ways that we need to keep talking to these people, but going to a party for Russia Day just seems so tone-deaf to me.
Yeah, no one's going to criticise them for going and having a meeting with the ambassador.
Yeah.
That's all well and good, but going to...
Champagne and canapés, ain't it?
Yeah, well, it'd be vodka and canapés.
Probably.
No, I mean, it just seems utterly bonkers.
Well, I suppose, I agree, but I think to play devil's advocate, you imagine that up until the war, as you were suggesting, people were still maintaining links, they were still going to these dues, personal relationships do build up, even with governments and individuals, that these politics you might not share and so on, so maybe there was something like that. But the fact it was only two, I think, probably indicates that maybe it was just a pretty bad lapse in judgment.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but I'm washing my hair that night, you know, that's all you need to say. You don't have to be rude about not going, you just have to not go.
Yeah.
It is, as you say, tone-deaf, isn't it?
Yeah.
They just don't get it.
Actually, we're almost at time. I know, Emma, this is one you've picked. I'll throw it at Tom, just because he looks like he may be a bit of a boozer. Daily Star Sunday, Tom.
Yes.
When you're out having a pint in a pub this afternoon, which I'm sure you will be, are you worried about drunken Asian hornets?
I am now, having So as far as I understand it, these drug-enating hornets are marauding around Britain. They particularly like beer and bubbly. They're getting drunk on it, presumably, by the sounds of it. And I don't know if that makes them more vigorous or violent, but either way, if you hear that buzz, run a mile from wherever you are.
How do you know if you've seen a hornet?
Because they're ginormous.
Oh,
But we were learning about horseflies being enormous.
Horseflies are quite... I mean, compared to other things that bite you in the same way, horseflies are significantly bigger. But hornets, you can tell the difference between a hornet and a wasp.
Well, in that case, I don't think I've ever seen one.
I've seen them not in this country. I mean, it's quite interesting. Maybe we have an exchange, because the last time I was in Asia, the thing that you had to worry about was drunken British tourists. So maybe we're just swapping.
Yeah, maybe. Who knows? Well, if you've spotted a hornet anywhere, particularly a drunk one...
Take a picture of it and send it to us.
Yes, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Thank you both. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Now, you remember that yesterday, being the 1st of July, I made a month resolution.
You started your diet?
Yeah, to start the diet, yeah.
Me too.
Yeah, but it didn't last very long.
No, I had a pizza. And 3 little ice creams.
I had a lot to eat yesterday, which is such a shame.
So we're restarting ours on Monday.
Yes, I was going to say Monday's a good day to start anything, isn't it? Because we should all be losing a bit of weight. Should we all be fasting, though, to do it? It's rare to meet someone these days who hasn't actually tried fasting, and everybody's got a view on it.
Yeah, now, according to some, it's a miracle. Keeps you healthy, youthful, and boosts your brain power. The new evidence shows intermittent fasting can make weight loss easier.
Lots of people who really believe in this. So let's find out more. How do you do it? From weight loss coach Liton Ali. Hello there. A very good morning.
Good morning.
Hi.
Nice to see you back on TV.
When we talk about fasting, how do you understand it? It's obviously, is it 2 days a week? Is it every other day? What should we be doing if we're going to try and embrace fasting?
Well, I think fasting is a term that's been hijacked by the weight loss industry accidentally. I'm fasting right now, and it's because I've woken up a bit earlier than I expected to this morning. We fast every single night. That's where the term breakfast comes from. It's the first meal you eat in the day. You're breaking your fast. So actually, when it comes to intermittent fasting, everybody's doing it. What normally happens is your body runs on glucose most of the time, and that glucose tends to run out overnight when you're asleep, even though, you know, you're powering your body when your heart's beating, you're breathing, etc. And every single night you run out of that glucose and you start to make this metabolic switch to something called ketones instead. So all you really have to do to fast is just delay your breakfast a little bit and maybe have your dinner a little bit earlier, and you're already fasting. It's not really a hard thing to do.
Yeah, but if you do it that way, and I get it, but if you do it that way, it's not going to make the significant difference, is it, as doing something like the 5-2 diet, where you only eat, 500 calories 2 days a week?
It's funny. So I wear a blood glucose monitor. So I've got I work for a company called Limbo that does continuous glucose monitoring. And what that does, it shows me the impact of just about every choice I make on my body. And what I know is that when I do it that way, I'm taking full advantage of what my body is trying to do with this energy. So I used to eat first thing in the morning at 5 o'clock. I've got very young twins, so I tried to get up before them and eat. And then I'd eat again at 7 o'clock. And it's not the calories that you consume, it's what you're putting into your body. And I used to eat porridge first thing in the morning, and it would make my blood sugar spike rapidly, which is a terrible thing for your health, especially as you're starting to get older as well, because you become resistant to insulin, which is a bad thing. It's how you end up getting type 2 diabetes. So the way to really do intermittent fasting, it depends on your body. It's something that you should just do by extending your natural fast. I think I grew up in a Muslim household. Fasting for us was you don't eat or drink all day. But actually, intermittent fasting is you can drink when you're intermittent fasting. It's just about not putting more nutrients in your body, so avoiding having an actual meal. So you can still drink coffee when you're doing intermittent fasting, for example.
So would we be fasting if, for instance, we had a meal last night before we went to bed, because we get up so early? So if I ate last night at 6 o'clock, and I haven't eaten, so I've been in bed and doing the programme now, won't even think of eating probably until midday. Is that a fast?
you're already doing intermittent fasting. Yeah, exactly. So as long as you've stopped eating and your body's done all the housework and the housekeeping it needs to do to start to kind of deal with what it's doing with the protein you've eaten, what it's doing with the carbohydrates you've eaten, yes, you are fasting. And not eating breakfast till midday is, the people I work with, it's one of the ways they start to lose extraordinary amounts of weight. They just stop eating breakfast so early in the morning. And what they find is their body is starting to then access the stored fat that it's got, because those ketones I was talking about, they are fueled by your stored fat.
Well, it's interesting. I don't know what I make of it. I don't know. Nelly, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. You get me thinking about that one. Mind you, see, I had that pizza last night at about 4:30.
Yeah.
And I've not eaten anything since, and I won't eat till
No, didn't you say you
about
just
1
had
o'clock.
ice creams or something as well?
No, pizza and ice cream.
Oh, I see. Pizza and ice cream.
So I should be stick thin by lunchtime.
Well, me too. You see, that's what I don't understand.
No, I don't quite get it.
There's more to it, isn't there?
I think you probably have to do it on a regular basis.
And then when you do eat, it's got to be really healthy, low-calorie stuff.
But plus, also with us, because our metabolic systems are so out of sync with these shifts, I don't know if it's totally different.
If you're a shift worker, though, I mean, there are probably lots of people watching at the moment who are shift workers. How do you cope with that? And you probably go through vast extended periods where you are actually fasting.
Yeah.
But when you do then give in to food, because you're starving by then, and it's a comfort, isn't it, because you're tired, then you probably eat far too much of the wrong stuff.
That's what I did yesterday. I hadn't eaten for 27 hours.
Crumbs.
So...
That's what happens when you go dog shopping.
That's dog shopping for you. Anyway, whether you're going dog shopping or just out for a walk today, let's hope it's nice for you. Here's the weather.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it certainly remains changeable for most of us. Wettest conditions generally in the north, and that's all down to this area low pressure, which is not going to go very far over the next few days. And note the tightly packed isobars, indicating it's going to be a fairly blustery day across the northern half of the country today. So a little bit more detail this morning. Quite a bright start across the south, but the cloud will bubble up here as the day goes on, limiting the sunshine a little bit. But for northern areas, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Exception, Orkney and the far north of Scotland here. The rain's going to persist for much of the day. But for Shetland, certainly a better day than Saturday here with a mixture of sunny spells and showers. In the sunshine across the south, highs reaching around 22, possibly 23 degrees, so feeling fairly pleasantly warm. Into the evening, very little changes across the south. Quiet end to Sunday with some late spells of sunshine. Further north, continuing the risk of some further showers. And again, still that rain persisting across the very far north of Scotland. And under the clear skies for most of us, a little bit fresher than of late, but still generally remaining in double figures across most towns and cities. So we start Monday morning across many parts of England and Wales on a fairly bright note, but this area of cloud and that breaks of rain across Ireland will gradually spread its way eastwards as the day goes on. Still that rain across the very far north of Scotland too, so really into the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine down towards southeastern England, maybe some southern parts of Scotland too, and in any sunshine, temperatures just climbing into the low 20s. Then looking ahead to Tuesday and Wednesday, and really very little changes, still going to be dominated by that area low pressure. So a mix of sunny spells and showers, majority of the showers across the northern half of the country, and temperatures for most of us around average for the time of year.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political budgets.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But boom.
And action.
Sergeant, the big read, my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 2nd of July. Today, new measures to crack down on disruptive activists. Police will now have powers to move on static protests.
A 5th night of rioting in France as police and protesters continue to clash. But are there signs that the unrest could be winding down?
Dentists hit out at government plans to force them to work for the NHS. Is the proposal really fair?
And it's a big weekend for space fans. The Euclid telescope has been launched on its million-mile journey to map the dark universe. Expert Andy Lound will join us later.
And as always, I'm going to bring you the latest weather update.
Good morning. We saw a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers yesterday. What does the second half of the weekend have in store? Find out in a little bit.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
So, do cats and dogs, can they get on? Because I'm getting a new dog. Well, we, not I, we are getting a new dog. And we've got to get him introduced to Timmy.
Yeah.
But we're told, because at Ridgeback, as long as he introduces a puppy, it will be absolutely fine.
Well, Sandra says, I'm so pleased you're getting a dog that you want to ensure is compatible with Timmy. But do you realise that Ridgebacks were originally lion hunters?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, trained as lion hunters.
Doesn't that make them fierce? But they're not. They're well known for being
very
docile.
placid. Well, very placid, but yeah, they can. I mean, they're built like tanks. So yeah, they can be very fierce.
See, Sam says, "Wow, Stephen, you're brave getting a Ridgeback. We had one of those. Nice dog, but would never trust one around a cat. Poor Timmy."
No. We spoke to we were going to get it through a really good breed. She's an amazing lady. Been absolutely, because that was our first concern, of course, was how Timmy. So that's the way to do it. You can't.
Do dogs and cats always get on in the same household?
Don't think so. But you can with this one. If you introduce a slightly old, even a few month old Ridgeback to a cat, they're not going to like it. But if you start from day one, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Interesting to know. He's not getting it till September, so
yeah,
it'll be very interesting to see how that goes, won't it?
We shall see. Anyway, you've got some good experiences. Beaton's been in touch. Hi, Beaton says, yes, felines and canines can get along fine. Here's a picture of Painter the cat, Goldilocks the trespasser, and Ella the fox.
Oh, yes.
All sharing a close but socially distanced animal picnic.
Yes. Maybe that's the way to do it. Marion says, good morning from Bulgaria. We had 6 dogs and numerous cats for many years. Now we only have 2 dogs left, Tia and Max, both bull terriers.
But you see, there's a bull terrier, don't know which one it is, but with a cat.
Sitting on?
Sitting on him, head in its ear.
They clearly love each other, don't they?
Beautiful.
That's
beautiful.
nice.
Danny says, good morning, I have a 9-month-old basset hound and a 5-year-old English cat, both sat on the dining room table there. They seem to be happy sharing a living room.
Yes, they obviously get on. Why they're on the table, I don't know. Linda in Norfolk says, Stephen, you're right. When Mabel was a puppy, oh, look at those dogs, she had no problem with cats and generally ignored them. However, now, at nearly 4, she can spot one a mile off and turns into the Tasmanian devil. This is her, though, with her best friend, Betsy.
And she's a little cockapoo.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. So you've got Betsy, who's sort of apricot-coloured, and what was it? Maisie, was it the other one? I've forgotten already.
Mabel.
Mabel, who's the black one there. Absolutely gorgeous. I like cockapoos. Jenny says Tigger the cat was first and definitely the boss. Oh. Izzy joined him as a puppy.
Now, what we're looking at here, for benefit, if you're listening, is... That is, I think, probably a King Charles Spaniel, do you think?
Something like that.
Looks a bit like that. Who's resting his or her head on the cat.
You see, that's lovely. Didn't take long before they became lifelong friends. They died within 2 days of each other, together forever.
Oh, that's heartbreaking, but absolutely beautiful picture. No wonder it's a favourite picture of yours.
Isn't it funny? Because that would have been doubly heartbreaking for you.
Yeah.
But also... Is there a comfort in that, them going together? It's a gorgeous picture.
It's a lovely picture. Thank you for that.
That's what I mean, Timmy's 14, so he's gonna go first. But I hope they become really good friends. That's what I want. I want to wake up in the morning and see them both curled up in the dog basket.
Oh, somebody got in touch with us saying when we're here doing the job, do we leave the television on at home?
Oh,
so
yes.
that the dog
It's Lauren.
See you. I hadn't really thought about that.
Yeah. But the TV...
I don't know whether that would drive...
On,
yeah, well, that's true, yes, he always does have, doesn't he?
Yeah, he always
I
leaves it
never
on.
thought of putting the telly on just for Ellie to watch.
No. You might talk differently. You might have your phone voice on.
It might drive
now.
her absolutely nuts.
Might do. No, it's Lauren, who's a regular viewer in the evening, watching from Vancouver Island, and is getting ready for bed. And she says we're celebrating Canada Day today. So she's been busy all day. So happy Canada Day.
Oh, that's lovely. I'm glad you're watching there. That's brilliant.
Canada Day. It's not easy to say that, is it? Anyway, thanks for all your thoughts. Keep them coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Pictures as well, please.
Yes, please. And now, new measures to crack down on disruptive protests come into force today, including an expansion of police powers and a new criminal offence of tunnelling.
Authorities will now have powers to disperse static protests, a common tactic of groups like Just Stop Oil or Extinction Rebellion.
Well, earlier we spoke to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley.
These laws, sadly, are a reflection upon the liberal, fluffy and woke police leadership, which has, quite frankly, not used existing powers and has allowed protest groups to cause so much disruption by the slow walking and other tactics. If the police were more robust and they used the existing laws, then the Home Secretary would not be forced into a corner and would not have to bring about these new laws, which are simply designed to make the police do their job.
The trouble is, some of these, the way protesters are protesting nowadays, they thought it through. It makes the police look stupid and unable to do their jobs properly, doesn't it? It actually makes them a laughingstock.
Yes, but there is so much existing legislation that the very simple laws, such as behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, which could be used if the police leadership was stronger, was more robust, and was actually on the side of every working man and woman in the country. For example, this slow walking, which has been a plague upon our major cities, particularly London. There is a raft of public order legislation, behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, loads of laws which, if the police had done their job and got rid of these people out of the roads so that people could go about their daily business, then there would be no need for these new laws. But the police have simply failed us all. So the Home Secretary has had to do something, and so we see these new laws coming into power today.
What I don't understand, Peter, with all of this, and you see it with we've seen protests where people are getting pints of milk in supermarkets and pouring them on the floor, or, as you say, walking in front of vehicles very slowly. If we did that as individual members of the public, we'd just be carted off, wouldn't we? I mean, you get arrested on the spot, so I don't understand why, if you're a protest group, you somehow get away with it.
But you've hit on such an important point, and this is where the police have been repeatedly failing us. Well, today, it might be a pint of milk, it might be a milkshake that is thrown over a protester, but I don't want these things to escalate. What might be a milkshake today could turn out to be, for example, and I dread the thought, but it could be battery acid tomorrow, and so things could escalate.
Yeah, well, lots of you getting in touch on that one. Margaret says, is walking down the road illegal? If not, it should be and should be enforced. I think it probably is.
I think it is. It's good. I think that's what you call jaywalking, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, probably.
And you're causing a public nuisance, aren't you?
Well, you know, I sort of think if protesters want to do it, they sort of do it. You know what I mean? It's about causing some level of disruption. I'm not against that per se. It's just they should then be, you know, someone call the police dash out with the blues and twos going and arrest them.
Yes, exactly. Steve says they're a waste of hard-working people's time, these protesters. Heavy fines should be the first step. No one has the right to interfere with people's everyday life.
Kathy says, why aren't they at work or busy? I have to say,
well, they're at work.
I do think that a little bit. But she also says we should stop their benefits. If they're just protesting, they're not available for work. That would soon stop them.
Bob says these people are virtue signalling vandals. They do it because there are no significant consequences. I think that's the way. That's a very good way to express it. No significant consequences. There's going to be more and more of it.
Helena says the right to protest, yes. The right to disrupt, no. And yeah, I sort of agree with you on that, Helena. Anyway, I mean, the idea of protest where you just sort of have a march or whatever and
hold your banner up.
Does anybody listen to that though? That's the thing. It's about having a protest where people actually pay attention, which is where the disruption comes in.
It's like the protesters who always stand behind the politicians that we interview outside Parliament. Does anyone actually read what any of those banners say?
No, they're the anti-Brexit stuff, aren't they?
They are, yeah. And they just keep doing it, and it's just tiresome in the end, isn't it?
It is tiresome, but the issue with that is you just think, oh, it's that lunatic again, wearing his big blue hat, rather than actually paying any attention. Yeah. So I can see why people think disruption is the way, because it gets us talking about it.
Yes, of course it does.
But if you want to disrupt, then you've got to face the consequences.
But yeah, that's it. And it's one thing to just disrupt people's everyday life, but when there's an emergency, when somebody's trying to get to hospital, when there's an ambulance trying to get through or something like that, or maybe you're just trying to take your kids to school, having somebody disrupt that is serious and horrible. It's so hostile.
Yeah. Anyway, if you've got views, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. If you want to support the protesters or be against these new laws, it would be fascinating to hear from you. Let's try and get all sides of the debate on this one. I think they may be a few and far
Well,
between.
Leon's got in touch from Northampton. Morning, Leon. He says, I agree with Peter Blexley. If we have existing laws to deal with them, let's use those existing laws. I'm not overjoyed about rushed through additional laws to address protesting, as that then becomes the norm and applies to all.
Yeah. Oh, well, fair point. Well, he also says, I may want to protest against digital money in the future. Well, we should all have the right to protest if we want to.
What's wrong with digital money?
I don't understand it.
It's better than coins and notes and things, isn't it?
Oh, it depends what it means. If it's cryptocurrency and all
I don't
that,
understand
though,
that.
No, I don't know what that is. Still don't know what that is.
No, but to the rest of us, actually, money is just figures on a spreadsheet, isn't it? It's it's figures on an app now, isn't it?
Yeah.
You never actually get to hold the money, do you? It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just numbers.
It's easy, though, isn't it? Oh, that's a whole new debate.
Yeah, it really
Start
is.
that one if you like on the email, gbviews@gbnews.com.
I'd rather have a look at your pictures of cats and dogs.
Yes, that'd be very nice.
It's lovely looking into your living room.
Well, because we're very nosy, basically.
Yeah, we like to see what goes on in your house.
Yes, we do. Live stream would be good. It's 13 minutes past 7. Let's bring you up to date with some of the other stories. And health officials have raised concerns about people being bombarded with gambling ads after a record high number have asked for help for gambling addiction in England. 1,400 patients referred last year. 7 new clinics are being opened as a result of high demand.
Twitter has applied a temporary limit to the number of tweets that users can read in a day. Thousands are tonight reporting problems accessing the site. I'm not sure what we're looking at there.
Teachers, but that's another story.
Yeah. The owner of Twitter, Elon Musk, has announced, via Twitter, of course, that unverified accounts are limited to 600 reads a day, whilst verified accounts can read up to 6,000.
Now, senior ministers are predicting a total clear-out of Conservative MPs before the next election.
Yeah, citing the Tories' continuing drop in popularity, party sources claim that many more will join the dozens who have already announced that they won't be standing.
Let's talk to former Labour advisor and associate editor of Labour Uncut, Kevin Marr. Good morning to you. Nice to see you. I do wonder why Tory ministers, the high-ups, are predicting a total clear-out. Is this expectation management in a way? Because clearly that's not going to happen.
It's a very unusual story. I mean, we're probably about 12 months away, I guess, from a general election. 18 months probably at the furthest point. So it's not unusual that you start to see some MPs announcing that they're not going to stand at the next election. Usually, typically, what that would be is probably MPs in their early 70s that might have been MPs 25 years who, for perfectly logical reasons, are retiring. But what we're starting to see is a whole swathe of Conservative MPs, much younger. Some of them that have only served one term, announcing that they're quitting. Now, that's unusual when people in their 40s are starting to do that, and it does give a sort of sense of sort of imminent death to the government in terms of why they're going. They're going because rats deserting a sinking ship, jumping before they're pushed. Choose your metaphor, but they sense they're going to lose, basically, which is a kind of terrible look for a government that is desperately trying to staunch some of the big problems that it's got ahead of the election. And its own MPs announcing that they're going in droves. There's already 40 said they're going. Is a really bad look.
It doesn't say much for their character, because I think we would generally like to believe that somebody wants to become an MP so that they can serve the community and make a difference. And if these MPs are just sort of fleeing, they're rats fleeing a sinking ship, they don't fancy being in opposition, and that really doesn't speak to their character very well, does it?
It doesn't really. I think that's a fair point. That there's a kind of an honour and an integrity to standing, defending your party standard for good or ill, and if you have to go down with the sinking ship, then you go down with it. There's nothing wrong with losing. I mean, I remember of course the Michael Portillo moment in the 1997 general election when the point when Michael Portillo was a very prominent cabinet minister, loses his seat, and then it was a kind of microcosm of what was happening that evening. Michael Portillo handled that occasion very difficult for him personally, but he handled it with great kind of grace and dignity, I thought. And there's nothing wrong with losing. If you can't manage a political party when you've got everybody sat on the edges of their seats looking for other opportunities as soon as the going gets tough, and that's where Rishi Sunak's. That's where he is right now. He's in a desperate situation, trying to turn around some very, very difficult issues. He mentioned the other day, apparently at some event, that he's got the kind of worst in tray of any prime minister ever, and that's probably true. He needs his party to unite and rally behind him, really. And what this story is about is that 40 of them have already announced that they're going to go. Plenty more are already are lining themselves up as well. CVs will be going around the headhunters in London and all the rest of it. It's a terrible, terrible look because if they don't believe they can win, then it becomes a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that they aren't going to win, and that becomes absolutely disastrous. So I suspect there's a lot of annoyance with Conservative MPs that are not going, who are prepared to kind of fight and possibly lose. There's probably a great deal of annoyance with their colleagues that are trying to get in the queue for the plum jobs as they see it. Now, what tends to happen with ex-MPs is that once you're an ex-MP, you're just an ex-MP. The idea that you go into some lucrative sinecure once you've toddled off from Parliament is probably for the birds, which they may find out the hard way. But yeah, it's a very, very bad look for a government in office that's struggling to see its own MPs not prepared to line up and fight behind the ramparts.
OK, Kevin Marr, good to see you this morning. Thanks very much indeed. You sort of think there's always a churn in Parliament.
A churn?
People who, people go.
Yes.
You imagine there's less of a churn on the Labour benches at the minute because they're going to be thinking, well, if I hang on
in there, I could be in power.
Yeah, could be part of the government.
Get a nice, tasty cabinet job.
So there'll be less churn.
And what do these MPs think they're going to go on to do? I mean, some of them, if they've been in cabinet or anywhere near the top, they will walk into city consults, won't they?
Probably.
But
probably. But look, if they're just a backbencher, I don't know if they just go into ordinary jobs. I don't know.
Michael Portillo became a TV personality, didn't he? He went all over the world on trains. Yes, that's
trains,
right.
and obviously a fashionista.
Fashionista?
Well, with his jackets and things.
Oh, I'd never thought of that.
Sometimes when he walks in here in a
very
morning,
bright colours.
I want my sunglasses on. I wouldn't. Not my choice of clothes, but it works for him.
But I mean, at one point he was touted to be Prime Minister.
PM,
material.
yeah. Because he was Defence, wasn't he? Was he Defence Secretary?
Yes, he was, I think.
Anyway.
But then look what happened to him. Amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, let's turn our attention to the other side of the channel, should we? Where there's been another night of riots, but are they quietening down a little bit?
Yes. I mean, it's up to the French President, Macron, to try and figure out what's going on. He's under a lot of pressure. He's had to cancel a few trips, no longer bopping with Elton John.
Yes.
Other things to look at.
Let's talk to journalist Peter Allen. Morning to you, Peter. What's your take on it as a slightly quieter night?
It was slightly quieter, Steve, but not that much quieter. The arrest figures so far already up to 500. They tend to be revised as the day goes on. Yesterday, the arrest figures were about 400 at this time, and then by lunchtime, they're about 1,300. I was in Nanterre early in the day around the funeral of Nahel Mazoul, this poor 17-year-old boy who was shot dead last Tuesday, and that was very, very peaceful, of course. A little bit later, there was a lot of friction, and I came into central Paris, and I saw gangs rampaging through the streets. The big difference last night was that the big shopping streets, including the Champs-Élysées, the Rue de Rivoli, they had masses of riot police on them that pulled down these designer grills, you might call them, on the big luxury department stores, and the smaller shops were all boarded up. So perhaps people were just better prepared last night, but still there were thousands of people on the streets, not just in Paris, but also across the nation, Marseille, Toulouse, you name it.
President Macron was considering declaring a state of emergency. What would that do?
What it would effectively do, Anne, is bring in the military far more. At the moment, Emmanuel Macron keeps announcing extra police every night. He's up to 45,000 extra police each evening. He's going to run out of policemen soon to push out. So then he brings in the army. It also it allows him to use a range of measures, such as curfews. Imagine that in 2023, the land of liberty, equality, fraternity, bringing in curfews across the nation so people can't go out after 9 o'clock at night or until 6 in the morning. Absolutely unbelievable. That's what a state of emergency legislation will allow them to do. It's Algerian war legislation. It was brought in at a time when France was close to civil war in the early 60s, in the late 50s. And that's an option. He's cancelled a visit to Germany today, a state visit. It's certainly a state of crisis at the moment. And his next step would probably be to introduce a state of emergency unless there's a massive change in the public consciousness and the rioting stops some other way. But that's one of the few options open to him, really, Anne.
What's the overall thinking of this? Do they just want to try to bring this situation under control and then forget about it and move on? Or because it is, the protests are a much bigger part of French culture, whether we like it or not. Or is there a sense that actually there's a fundamental problem here that needs to be addressed?
Well, both views are right, really. Effectively, there is a fundamental problem here that needs to be addressed, which is France has a huge, very young, aspirational, ethnic minority community, which generally is treated extremely badly. I mentioned the Algerian war there. At the time, millions of Algerian citizens who were counted as French citizens at the time, but second-class French citizens, they were pushed into suburbs like Nanterre. That was one of the biggest shanty towns in France in the early 60s. These developed into the high-rise estates you see now, the Cinque estates, and the new generations of these ethnic minority Algerians, for example, complain of the same problems that their grandparents complained of, which is discrimination in jobs, in housing, in the way they're policed. And of course, it was an extreme example, a young French Algerian being shot in the chest by a policeman. But they say this is indicative of how young Algerians and indeed older Algerians are treated today. So that's a fundamental problem in the Republic. But the answer to your first question there, Steve, is that will it change? No, it probably won't change. That's the whole problem. Institutionally, France is based around a massive security state, quite unlike Britain. There are thousands of paramilitary police in France, whole units of them. They go out, they're not interested in burglaries, they're not interested in muggings, they're not interested in the day-to-day concerns of ordinary people. They are there to protect the state. And they're like soldiers, really. And that's what we're seeing every single night. And the knee-jerk reaction of any president is to support those paramilitaries and to not support the citizens who have problems. Those citizens might be white working class, gilets jaunes, the yellow vests who rioted week after week after week. They might be people complaining about pension reform who rioted for a considerable amount of time a few months ago. And the latest is mainly young ethnic minority youths who are doing exactly the same thing. France isn't changing, and the security state is getting more and more powerful, Steve.
Peter Allen, really good to see you this morning. Thank you.
In the end, it's going to have an effect on the economy as well, isn't it? Because tourists, I mean, if they brought in a curfew where you had to be back in your hotel or whatever by 9 o'clock at night, what's that going to do? Yeah. It's terrible, isn't it? Because France should be such a wonderful place.
Should be. Should be. If you're planning on going, let us know. gbviews@gbnews.com. Now, if you have a toothache, who are you going to call? Well, it's not that easy to find an NHS dentist anymore. Bringing more on this in just a moment.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It is 7:29 and 55 seconds.
6.
Just to be precise.
7, 8, 9. Now it's 7:30.
7:30. Good morning. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, there are growing calls for changes to financial regulations as more people have their bank accounts closed without reason.
It's all very odd, isn't it?
It's very sinister.
Earlier this week, our very own Nigel Farage says he may be forced to leave Britain after his bank closed his accounts and he's not been able to open any new ones
because he's just blackballed, yeah. It's not just high-profile politicians, though, who are getting cancelled by banks. An Anglican church leader had his savings account closed down by Yorkshire Building Society. The Reverend Richard Fothergill spoke to GB News last night.
As somebody said to me, if they're going to be that picky about the values and worldview of their customers, of their 3 million customers or what they have, they weren't going to end up with very many left. You know, people are going to leave, because that's the whole thing about genuine diversity, the diversity of opinion. We all have different views and we're allowed to express them. This is Britain. So one of the reasons I went and talked to a journalist at the Times yesterday was to flag this up. I mean, I suppose what I would like, really, from YBS would just be an apology, and I hope that they wouldn't do it again. I hope that they wouldn't actually bully and intimidate anyone else that has a different opinion to themselves.
It's interesting, because Nigel Farage, I was speaking to him yesterday, said it's happening all over. I mean, it's much more than you'd think. And people don't talk about it because they're sort of ashamed.
Yeah, well, it's embarrassing, isn't it?
That somehow the banks have sort of cancelled them and they don't have to say why. And so you start worrying about it yourself and you're almost ashamed to make a fuss about it.
But what do you do? You know, what do you do? If your bank account's closed, then which is embarrassing enough, but then go anywhere else and they won't have you. Yeah. I don't know how you actually operate your life.
Presumably that then impacts your credit rating anyway.
Well, yeah.
It would.
It would do.
And then you just can't function if you can't access a bank account.
You could go and access. You could maybe go and open a bank account in a different country, but then there's all sorts of fees and charges. So it's much more expensive to do. And whether you can do direct debits. What I think is just amazing is that
they can do it and they don't have to tell you why.
It's very odd. We are continuing to try to get some answers on all this one.
If you've ever been affected like that, do get in touch, won't you? Because clearly there's a campaign needed here, isn't there? GB Views at gbnews.com.
It's only been 18 months.
I know, I'm sorry. It's a Sunday morning. Can't cope.
Now, dentistry leaders are hitting out against plans to force them, or force new graduates at least, to work for the NHS.
Now, we all thought it was a good idea when we heard about it, didn't we? It's part of Rishi Sunak's NHS overhaul, and it's aimed at solving staff shortages and increasing our access to affordable dental care.
Yeah, but the British Dental Association says the proposal could drive students to leave the UK and train elsewhere.
Really, would it? Joining us now is Dr. Sam Jethwa, founder of Bespoke Smile Advanced Dentistry and Academy. Lovely to see you. Hello.
Nice to see you again.
I find it extraordinary that, because we help subsidise the training of dentists, don't we? We, the taxpayer. So why wouldn't they want to pay back in some way when they graduate and do NHS work?
Yeah, I think there's been maybe some slight misunderstanding. I think that anyone listening to that plan actually sounds like a good plan. And at the moment there is a 1 year where you don't have to, but you can work within the NHS. I did it, and often you continue working in the NHS for a few years following that as well. Because as a new graduate, you come out with some skills, but you don't come out with all the skills you need, and you do need to gain a bit of experience. And NHS is a great place to do that because you have a supply of patients to help over a number of years. And so the plan in itself is actually quite good. Most people do stay within the NHS as there is a training pathway that takes you somewhere. So making that compulsory is not a bad idea, it's just the forcing and maybe the messaging and how that's delivered needs to be carefully constructed, because nobody wants to be forced to do anything. I think that it's a good idea in principle, just the details we don't really know yet.
So what the BDA is saying, well, it could well force, it could well reduce the number of, reduce the number of NHS dentists in this country, because a lot of people would just want to train elsewhere so they can then come back and just go straight into the private sector.
I think there will always be a certain number of people in any profession who have a certain goal, and they'll find a way, no matter what, to do that. I don't particularly think that there will be a big issue in that, because generally dentists want jobs, and the NHS is a great place for them to find those jobs. The training that you get within that pathway should be good enough that actually by the time the dentists have spent a couple of years in that pathway, they'll be good enough to do more advanced work in secondary care. The only issue that I see is the NHS has got to be, for a dentist or any healthcare professional, an attractive place to work and be working. And what you may find is that actually one of the issues we're having in the staff shortages is people are leaving the NHS. Dentists, doctors, etc. So if they're forced to work within a structure and an environment that they don't like to be in, and it's been 2, 3, 4 years of the forcing, compulsory nature, then inevitably they will leave. Whereas trying to create an environment that actually has a bit of choice in it, you're able to be delivering the care you want to deliver, then perhaps they'll stay a little bit longer.
It's fascinating sitting here alongside a dentist, because I've always wanted to know, you said that, how you got to make sure that you still are an attractive profession to recruit more people into. What makes you want to be a dentist? Did you always want to be a dentist?
From the age of 11, I'm very weird, I think. It's not.
Why?
I used to love going. I used to enjoy going, and it's very odd. I think my parents had a lot to do with that, because when I was working, I don't see many children now, but in our clinic we do still see, as my associates do see, young kids. And often the fears of the parents have are transferred onto the children. And so my parents were always quite positive about going to the dentist, and so that was just how I felt going there, really, really quite pleased to be there.
I mean, we love dentists when we need them, don't we?
Yeah.
We were having this debate yesterday that you really should go to the dentist regularly. That's right. A lot of people were writing in saying that because they've got good teeth, very lucky, haven't seen the dentist for years, suddenly go to the dentist and find they've been
deregistered from their NHS. But it's like you should be going every year.
Well, this is part of the issue, is that the people have left the NHS. After the pandemic and coming back, the environment was very different. Many dentists decided to retire a little bit earlier, just like doctors did, and so there has been a bit of an issue on that front. The plan that was released yesterday by Rishi Sunak did mention that there should be more places offered to dental students, so 1,100, I believe, over the next 10 years, which is a long process, of course, but it takes 5 years to train a dentist. So that in itself is also a good thing. We do need more dentists, and if we can create an environment that's nice to work in, you're able to deliver the right care, that's the biggest challenge that I think they should focus on next.
I mean, one of the issues with this, and there's a survey out today talking about deterioration in children's health and looking at dentists, dental health for children deteriorating as well. I mean, one of the advantages of having a stronger NHS sector is that obviously children are going to get seen. in a way that they're not being done, they're not happening at the minute.
The study was very interesting. There were various nutrition and health things that were considered in that study, and the top thing was that all the nurses that were interviewed in that, 75% of them said that actually tooth decay was the biggest issue in young kids that were part of that study. So that's telling, isn't it? That there's a lot to do in terms of education, and the more the parents are educated, the more the kids are educated, the fewer issues they'll have, the fewer they won't be filling up the appointment diaries for the dentists who are already stretched. So it's all about prevention, as I've said on the show before. You know, it's all about what we can do to ensure that everybody knows the right skills of how to clean their teeth, what to eat, what not to eat. And that ties in with that study that was showing that people are eating not only not enough in some cases, but also the wrong things.
When you are trained, I'm fascinated by the training of dentists. I mean, you've got a model of... Do you actually work on model stuff first?
We do, but we also work on patients quite early. And that's why it does take a long time to train a dentist. We start with theory and we work on that sort of thing. And then, depending on the university that you're at, you start pretty early on real patients. And supervised, of course, and everything is safe. And that takes a while to get the hand skills, tying in with the clinical, and also the patient management. It's all about communication.
Yes, and it really is with dentists, isn't it? Because so many people are really fearful.
If you're being done by a trainee, is it cheaper? Is that a way people could look, say, is there any training schools near me and I could get some cheaper dental care?
Absolutely, but people have known about that for a long time, and so getting on the list is hard. But I was at King's College in London, and there's Guy's Tower in London, the big tower by the Shard, and there's floors of dental students working on real patients. Right? Yes, it takes us 3 hours at that time to do one single small filling, because every bit has to be checked, but those patients do receive the care at no cost.
Oh, right. Oh, well,
that is worth knowing.
If you're near a dental school, look into that.
Absolutely.
Look into, I mean, the advantage, from what you do now, we are in a stage, and I find it fascinating that where there are significant problems with teeth, you can actually do correction work now, which we never thought possible a few years ago. But of course, that comes at a cost. That's the problem. So you want to avoid that. I mean, you want to almost put yourself out of business, don't you?
With myself, we run an advanced dental clinic where we help patients with problems that the NHS is not going to be able to help them with, whether it's cosmetic, whether it's functional, whether it's to do with missing teeth or things like that, or confidence in their smile. And those things are not offered on the NHS. Those are in the private sector. The beauty, in some respects, of working within the private sector is we're able to afford time with our patients. So we can see a patient for a new patient consultation, and I can take 2 hours to do that. And that's a luxury that a lot of dentists don't have. And I think those are the things that if the government can start to work on, this plan is a good step. And if there's things that they can do to allow dentists to deliver more time, which will involve more dentists coming in, then that, I think, will change the landscape quite strongly to actually make it an attractive place for patients and for dentists.
One quick question then. Electric toothbrushes, are they really better than ordinary toothbrushes?
Well, they are exactly the same if both are used at the optimum level, but often people find it harder to achieve an optimum level with the manual toothbrush. So generally the advice is, if one can afford to, get an electric toothbrush. But then, like anything, it's all about the technique. So I do have a little model here. We have 1 minute.
Go on.
Last time I brought a big, huge model in. Yes. This time it's smaller, but I brought a lower set in, just to show everybody that actually the area you get the most plaque build-up is behind the lower back teeth. And that's when people see a hygienist was cleaning it off. I've brought a bit of an electric toothbrush here, the head of it. Why I'm showing you that is because the head should look as similar to this. When this starts to fray, then it must
not doing any good.
And that's the key thing. With electric toothbrushes, there's a bit of admin involved in getting the spit, and that people don't do that. So 3 months, roughly. On the back of the lower teeth, it's an area not to be missed. So you hold it there, and you let the electric toothbrush do its thing. Don't move it like you would a manual toothbrush. So when you do move from a manual toothbrush to an electric, that's the change. You let the electric do the work for you.
Yeah.
Otherwise, moving it and the brush moving it cancels out the
That's really
movement.
interesting. So it's that area behind those...
Yeah, obviously it's the whole mouth, but that one is a common area because there's saliva that pulls in that area and then it builds up there.
It's always where my hygienist spends the most time.
Yeah. There you are, that's why.
There we go.
Now I know.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Lovely. Sam, as always, really good to see you. Thank you very much indeed.
Right, well, do stick with us because we're having a look through the Sunday newspapers in just a couple of moments. You're watching Breakfast.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Well, it's time for the papers this morning, and we're joined by editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and political consultant Emma Burnell, if I can get my teeth in. I think Dr. Sam took them with him.
Yes, he did.
Let's have a look, Tom, at The Observer, should we? Looking at water giants.
Yes, so this is about the revolving door between the water companies, which are obviously going through a hell of a time at the moment, and the regulator, Ofwat. So this investigation's found that 2/3 of England's biggest water companies are employing executives who had previously worked at the regulator. So another kind of questionable practice. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussion in recent days about the amount of debt these companies have been getting themselves into, alongside the amount of dividends they're dispatching to their shareholders. This seems to be another sort of dysfunction in the system where the regulators, the people who were setting the rules for these companies, were generally going straight into those companies after they put in their couple of years of service.
That doesn't feel right, but I'm not sure why I'm uneasy about that. Why should we be uneasy about that?
I suppose the concern would be that the closer that you have the companies to the regulators, the more that there's that kind of revolving door, that kind of channel between the two, the easier time they're going to get. And whilst I think it was a mistake to privatise water in the first place, it's a natural monopoly in all these situations and so on. The point that was always made on the other side was you just need good regulation. Surely this isn't good regulation if you have that kind of back and forth.
A bit too close.
Yeah.
can we have a look, Emma? This it's in the front of the Sunday Times. I saw it headlined last night. 100,000...
10,000.
10,000, beg your pardon, killed by asbestos in schools.
Yeah, there are
This
still...
is worrying.
It's very worrying. There are still, I believe, 21,500 schools which still have asbestos in their buildings, and we've known for decades that asbestos is incredibly damaging, can cause certain types of cancer. And there are people who have died really quite young from, I think it's mesothelioma.
Yes,
I think,
it is mesothelioma.
which is the cancer that's caused by that. So
you get
people
pleural
dying.
plaques as well and things. Can't
Yeah,
you?
it's so we really do need, and unfortunately, of course, there was in the early 2000s a scheme that was set up by the government called Building Schools for the Future, which was going to upgrade all our buildings, and it was cancelled under the austerity programme.
I remember asbestos being removed from my school, my secondary school.
Yes, I do too.
I mean, I remember it happening in lots of places when I was a child, but before that, I remember there being asbestos in the streets. We used to use it like chalk.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
It's everywhere, wasn't it? Yeah.
So it's just a case of, and I think one of the things, the Times is now campaigning on this, and they're saying we're going to be retrofitting all these buildings anyway to reach net zero, to make sure that they're carbon neutral as possible. So while doing that, it surely makes sense to also make sure that these schools have...
You'd have to close the school down completely while you removed the asbestos, wouldn't you?
I mean, this is the problem. So I think it would... But, we are talking about buildings that are used a lot less for, say, 6 weeks in the summer.
I wonder where it goes. Where does waste asbestos go?
I don't know.
There must be a very specialised way of getting rid of it.
Yeah,
There has to be.
Yeah, yes. My granddad had mesothelioma. It's it's terrible.
Yeah.
Right, we've got to leave it there, sadly. I know it's a very quick run through, but it means we're going to give you lots of extra special time in the next hour.
Fabulous. I look forward to
more
that.
stories. Thank you both very much indeed. I just very quickly want to run you through a couple of pictures that you sent in about dogs and cats getting on. Natalie in Barry says, Tinker the cat and Precious the dog are best friends. There's...
that is beautiful.
There's Tinker
Lovely
cleaning
moving picture
Precious.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And that is absolute proof that they love each other.
It's a gorgeous, gorgeous video. Thank you very much indeed.
Of course, we're talking about this because Stephen is getting a dog who will have to be introduced to Timmy. This is a lovely one. This is from Mark in Aylesbury, who says they're sisters, Mara, a Romanian rescue dog, and Pearl.
Absolutely gorgeous. Keep your pictures coming through. GBviews at gbnews.com. Now, let's get some showbiz news for you. Stephanie Tetchy is here. Good morning.
Good morning,
It's
Stephen
lovely to
and
see you. What's going on with Joanna Lumley?
Oh, I love Dame Joanna Lumley. She's amazing. But she's come out and she said she's been diagnosed with prosopagnosia. I wanted to pronounce that right. And so that's like facial blindness. So
what does that mean? She doesn't recognise faces?
Inability to recognise facial faces. So, for instance, she says she could get you a glass of wine and then 15 minutes later, if she had to come back, she wouldn't be able to recognise you. She says with her loved ones, she's been able to recognise their faces, but for strangers or anyone else, she finds it really difficult to recognise people's faces. And people think she's quite aloof, but she said it's something that's really affected her. She's not the only celebrity who has this condition. Brad Pitt recently said he's got it as well. He's been suffering it for like the last year. Stephen Fry has officially been diagnosed with it. So it's quite a very interesting condition to have and quite peculiar.
You've got to be nice to everybody.
Well, that's what she said. Yeah. She said she's always kissing people on the cheeks to make up for it. And she's such a lovely, warm woman. So I think to go through such a condition must be
disability, that, isn't it? Well, especially if you're a public figure and you're meeting people all the time.
Especially as an actress as well on set. So you're working with so many people and then to think that you could easily forget their face.
It's awful, isn't it?
It's quite an odd one.
Who are you?
I'm Stephanie.
Oh, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Now, Madonna is going to... says she's going to have to scale back her tour. I should blooming well think so. She's just come out of ICU.
Yeah, well, Madonna's the ultimate showwoman. We know that, and we know that she's probably been gutted that she hasn't been able to start her world tour next week. But rumour has it that she's going to have to scale back on her 70-date tour. A lot of record executives are saying it was a bit too ambitious anyway. Like, she's 64 years old. She's now had this she's now been hospitalised, so there's no way that the tour's going to be able to go at the intensity it was, because before she got hospitalised, she was in the recording studio 12 hours a day. She was working out 6 days a week, so this is too much.
She's
on
just
the body.
obsessive, though. That's her.
Very
that's
taxing.
who she is.
She makes £1.3 billion from touring, so it's a lot of money. There is a lot of money involved with touring as well. Not that she needs it anyway.
No, well, health's more important than money.
Definitely.
Now, Kathy Burt, she doesn't mind being called babe or sweetheart.
No,
good on her.
She's saying there's a big problem now. She got told off by Stephen Graham, actor, who was saying that she shouldn't call people babe, treacle, darling. He's saying that
I call people treacle all the time.
I call people babe all the time and hun. But apparently he told her it was inappropriate, and she said she's had enough.
That's ridiculous.
Of being, scolded for, calling people such stuff. I think it's okay. I think it's quite endearing, actually.
Quite like it. I don't know.
My son's babe.
Yeah.
I'm texting them, say, hi, babe.
I've started calling everyone doll, which I've picked up off Ellie.
Yeah.
Ellie does.
Yeah, she
doll.
Yeah.
Right, doll. And I've picked that up. I just pick stuff up off people.
I call people like sweets, like sweetheart, darling, babe. And I think
that.
And if you don't have those words, it makes it all informal.
Yeah.
And quite boring.
I quite like it. Steph, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Little showbiz update for you.
Oh, I love it. Don't go anywhere, sweethearts, because we've got all your news heading away very shortly. All right, sweetie. First, though, here's your weather.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it certainly remains changeable for most of us. Wettest conditions generally in the north, and that's all down to this area low pressure, which is not going to go very far over the next few days. And note the tightly packed isobars, indicating it's going to be a fairly blustery day across the northern half of the country today. So a little bit more detail this morning. Quite a bright start across the south, but the cloud will bubble up here as the day goes on, limiting the sunshine a little bit. But for northern areas, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Exception, Orkney and the far north of Scotland here. The rain's going to persist for much of the day. But for Shetland, certainly a better day than Saturday here with a mixture of sunny spells and showers. In the sunshine across the south, highs reaching around 22, possibly 23 degrees, so feeling fairly pleasantly warm. Into the evening, very little changes across the south. Quiet end to Sunday with some late spells of sunshine. Further north, continuing the risk of some further showers, and again, still that rain persisting across the very far north of Scotland. And under the clear skies for most of us, a little bit fresher than of late, but still generally remaining in double figures across most towns and cities. So we start Monday morning across many parts of England and Wales on a fairly bright note, but this area of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Ireland will gradually spread its way eastwards as the day goes on. Still that rain across the very far north of Scotland too, so really into the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine down towards southeastern England, maybe some southern parts of Scotland too, and in any sunshine, temperatures just climbing into the low 20s. Then looking ahead to Tuesday and Wednesday, and really very little changes, still going to be dominated by that area low pressure. So a mix of sunny spells and showers, majority of the showers across the northern half of the country, and temperatures for most of us around average for the time of year.
First and foremost, I'm a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 2nd of July. Today, new measures to crack down on activists. Police have the powers now to stop static demonstrations like slow walk protests.
Labour wants to offer teachers a cash incentive to stop them quitting. But is that a good idea?
And the Tour de France is underway. Aidan's going to have the very latest for us.
It's also a very big weekend for space fans. The Euclid telescope has been launched on its million-mile journey to map the dark universe. We'll be talking to an expert about what that means.
And as always, we'll bring you the latest weather update.
Good morning. We saw a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers yesterday. What does the second half of the weekend have in store? Find out in a little bit.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Now, I'm getting a dog to go with the cat, and it's got you going this morning because I wanted pictures of your dogs and cats together.
He's getting a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Yes. Now, interestingly, Gillian in Wirral says, I urge Stephen to think about poor Timmy, who's been boss of the house for many years, and to bring in a very powerful dog like a Ridgeback. Cats are very sensitive animals. Don't you worry, Gillian. Timmy has been the very top of our agenda.
Yes,
in planning this.
Diane in Norfolk says, have you decided on a name?
Yeah, Rex.
Seriously?
Yeah.
OK.
Rex Ragnar Dixon.
Rex Ragnar.
Ragnar, because his dad's Ragnar.
I see. That's a surname. Yeah.
That's his father, Ragnar.
Yeah. Oh. It's a purebred.
It's very naughty. It's a very. He's
has a pedigree.
He's award-winning, you know.
What, the dad?
Yeah.
Oh. And are you getting a boy? You're getting a boy. Getting a boy.
Yes, Rex.
Yes. So otherwise it would be Regina, wouldn't it?
It would be.
Rex.
I wouldn't want to shout that out across the park.
No, I know, absolutely not. No, Rex is okay. But it's interesting that makes him king of the place already, doesn't it?
No, Timmy's always going to be king. Timmy will always be king. Oh, there's Timmy.
Oh, yes.
Oh, there's my baby boy. It's a baby boy. He's about 14.
Whose
which makes
nose
him
will be
about 18.
severely put out of joint by Rex.
Well, it will be. It will be for a few days at the beginning, but
See, that's what we've been asking everybody today: is do cats and dogs naturally get on?
Well, Peter says my little cat just won't leave his mate alone. Oh, it's another video. Thank you for the videos.
Oh no, they
it's
clearly.
a big black lab.
Yeah, and a little fluffy tab.
Oh, gorgeous,
A lab
gorgeous.
and a tab.
Susan says our dog Squire and cat Bongo just love each other.
Oh, that's
a
lovely.
gorgeous shot.
Oh, that's really lovely.
Like a dream in beige, those two together.
And then Martin says, I just want to say, Burbles are such brave dogs. Oh, that is a beautiful dog licking the cat.
Cleaning
and
the
the
cat.
likes it.
You see, that's just lovely. And that's what we want.
Oh, no, the cat's
look,
now having
cat's
a go back.
loving him back.
That's nice when cats and dogs get on like that.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And that's a big dog.
Yeah.
It's a big dog. So that's what we want. That's what we're aiming for.
Yeah.
Well, gorgeous. Thank you for that. It's very reassuring.
Brilliant to see your pictures. Thank you so much for sending them.
Videos. Lovely. So keep your thoughts coming through on that. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now, there are new measures in force from today, cracking down on disruptive protesters. They come into force today, and basically it expands police powers. And there's a new criminal offence of tunnelling.
Yeah, authorities will have powers now to disperse static protests, as then they've become known. It's common tactics of groups like Insulate Britain, Animal Rising or Just Stop Oil.
Well, earlier on, we spoke to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley.
These laws, sadly, are a reflection upon the liberal, fluffy and woke police leadership, which has, quite frankly, not used existing powers and has allowed protest groups to cause so much disruption by the slow walking and other tactics. If the police were more robust and they used the existing laws, then the Home Secretary would not be forced into a corner and would not have to bring about these new laws, which are simply designed to make the police do their job.
The trouble is, some of these, the way protesters are protesting nowadays, they thought it through. It makes the police look stupid and unable to do their jobs properly, doesn't it? It actually makes them a laughingstock.
Yes, but there is so much existing legislation that the very simple laws, such as behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, which could be used if the police leadership was stronger, was more robust, and was actually on the side of every working man and woman in the country. For example, this slow walking, which has been a plague upon our major cities, particularly London. There is a raft of public order legislation, behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, loads of laws which, if the police had done their job and got rid of these people out of the roads so that people could go about their daily business, then there would be no need for these new laws. But the police have simply failed us all. So the Home Secretary has had to do something, and so we see these new laws coming into power today.
What I don't understand, Peter, with all of this, and you see it with we've seen protests where people are getting pints of milk in supermarkets and pouring them on the floor, or, as you say, walking in front of vehicles very slowly. If we did that as individual members of the public, we'd just be carted off, wouldn't we? I mean, you get arrested on the spot, so I don't understand why, if you're a protest group, you somehow get away with it.
But you've hit on such an important point, and this is where the police have been repeatedly failing us. But today, it might be a pint of milk, it might be a milkshake that is thrown over a protester, but I don't want these things to escalate. What might be a milkshake today could turn out to be, for example, and I dread the thought, but it could be battery acid tomorrow, and so things could escalate.
You see, Dave's been in touch and says many years ago I parked my car on a narrow road which actually restricted the flow of traffic, and I was warned by the police that unless I moved it, I'd be charged with blocking the Queen's Highway. How come this isn't applied to today's protesters? Well, it should be.
Yeah, it should be.
Absolutely should be.
In fact, Jim in Durham says, make it a legal requirement for any protester or organiser of a protest to have liability insurance. So it allows claim for loss of life or harm, etc., because of the disruption. Or they have to pay the policing costs. They wouldn't do it if it actually cost them money.
Yeah. But Brian says, and it's an interesting point, I have no answers for you, Brian, says, how come we support protests in Russia, China, Iran, but not in the UK? It's just inconsistency.
That's quite a point.
It is quite a point, because although we see it from a different perspective, don't we? You know, the Iranian protests against the hijab and all the rest of it.
Look at the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong and everything.
Yeah, and we sort of say, well, that was totally behind it. Totally behind it, but obviously from their government's perspective, it's extremely disruptive and the wrong thing to do. So I think that's a very fair point, Brian, for which I have no answers whatsoever.
No. Stumped us.
Yeah, but keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.com.
Now on to politics, and senior ministers are predicting a total clear-out of Conservative MPs before the next election.
Yeah, citing the Tories' continuing drop in popularity, party sources say many more will join the dozens, well, 40-odd, who've already announced they won't be standing at the next election.
Let's consult now our political reporter, Catherine Forster. Morning, Catherine. Why would a senior minister be predicting this, even if it is true?
Well, the bad news for Rishi Sunak just keeps on coming, doesn't it? We already know that about 40 Conservative MPs have already said over the last few months that they will not be standing again. And now senior unnamed sources are predicting that potentially dozens more will follow them. I think largely because they're looking at the way the wind is blowing and the likelihood that the Conservatives are going to lose the next election, and that many of the 350-odd Conservative MPs that we currently have are simply going to lose their seat. So people we already know about include real big beasts of the last few years like Sajid Javid, like Dominic Raab, like Matt Hancock, that have already said they won't stand again. These are men who are, reasonably young and could have a good career potentially in the city or elsewhere, and are thinking about that now. We've also had people like young Red Wall MP and sort of Tory rising star Diana Davidson. Now, she only came in 2019. She's not even 30, but she's already decided that this is not for her and she's going to do something else. So potentially many more to follow, and many reasons being cited. One of which is simply exhaustion. They have had, it's been a very tumultuous time, hasn't it, over the last few years, with the Brexit referendum, then the deadlock over that, then COVID, war in Ukraine, the chaos under Boris Johnson, and then Liz Truss. The polls, of course, were narrowing, and now again Labour are consistently polling about 20 points ahead, and the renowned pollster Frank Luntz has basically said to any Conservative MP with a majority of 15,000 or less that basically they are probably gone. Another reason that's being cited by some is the level of abuse that they're getting. Put simply, it's increasingly difficult being an MP. They get a lot of abuse on social media. They get things sent through the post. Occasionally they get death threats and the police have to get involved. It is not by any means, in this age of constant social media, a job that is without risk or without personal cost. So it will be interesting to see who announces next that they're not standing. But of course, this all feeds into a feeling that the Conservatives are possibly on their way out, which is not the message that Number 10 and Rishi Sunak want to send if they're to have any hope at all of not losing the next election in a spectacular fashion.
OK, Catherine, thanks very much indeed.
It's not a good look, is it?
It's not a good look, but there you go. Yeah.
How are they going to go into the next election saying, you know, we deserve your votes, give us your votes, when it appears that it looks a bit like rats deserting a sinking ship. Very difficult one for Rishi Sunak to sell.
Yeah. Fasting. We were talking about fasting earlier on. Peter says, I don't fast, but my diet is very effective. It has no carbs in it. Yeah, the no-carb diet.
I'm sure that works, actually, but I don't think I could live without carbs.
No, I don't think I could do it. Vivian says, my grandma was called Vivian. I was sort of very fondness for the name. It sounds a bit dodgy not eating for 27 hours when you have type 1 diabetes. We don't want you being ill. It's fine. But you think of the old days where you used to have 2 injections a day and you had to eat at certain times and snack. And that's all.
But still, what does it do to
history.
your sugar levels if you don't eat for 27 hours?
Well, because you're running it's very technical. There's no point boring it with you, but it's perfectly doable. You don't have to eat at any set time now, as long as you manage it.
What does it do to your sugar levels when you eat a pizza and 2 ice creams?
It goes up for a sustained period of time. It's not good.
That's what he did last night.
It's not good, but I'm prepared for it. I know it's not going to be
Was it worth it?
Yes, it was worth it.
Of course it was.
Stuffed crust margarita.
Oh, sounds lovely.
Garlic bread.
We mustn't talk about food. When we talk about food, I always get very hungry.
Oh, sorry. Right.
And I'll make the wrong choices. Do stay with us, though. It's lovely to hear from you as ever, but do stay with us because we've got sport coming up in a couple of moments.
A bit of salad cream on it as well.
On what?
Pizza.
Salad cream on pizza? That's disgusting. You don't want to hear this.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
OK, let's talk Bazball, should we?
Bazball.
Still under fire, Ada McGee.
Certainly is under fire,
learning,
yeah.
Are they?
No, they're not, and that's what I mean. It's a little bit cultish, this. I mean, we spoke, we can almost say the same thing today as we said yesterday. We need it from 11 o'clock today. We need to come out of the blocks. And look, it's not all about the style of the batting. It's not all about the approach. Australia's pace attack is extremely formidable. I mean, look, the first four that came out yesterday, we opened up with Zach Crawley, Ollie Pope, Joe Root, Harry Brook. Root was out. I mean, Root's our top batsman. He was out for 18. Zach Crawley, 3. Ollie Pope, 3. Pat Cummins, the captain, and his partner, Mitchell Starc, absolutely outstanding. Probably on their way to becoming one of the greats to rival any of the Australians who were around in that era in the 90s and the early 2000s. And they just decimated England's top order. And so that left England with a huge mountain to climb. Duckett came out and gave a resilient 50. Hugely controversial, though, towards tea time yesterday. Mitchell Starc caught him, but the ball was adjudged via the third umpire to have skimmed the grass.
Oh.
So he was adjudged not to have been in complete control of the ball. Everybody I've spoken to, including myself, when I watched the replays, thought that was very, very lucky for England. Maybe. The Australians haven't had a good day. They actually left the field feeling very aggrieved. Is that the turning point? I mean, look, they've got a lot to do. I mean, they've got to chase 371, which has never been done in a Test match at Lord's before. But Ben Stokes is the factor here. Now, he's got a slight knee injury, but he will strike fear with the bat into Australia. And Australia have acknowledged that last night in their press conference because of what happened in 2019. He rattled off 359 to force the draw at Headingley on that occasion. Yes, it's 4 years on. Yes, Australia are much better than they were then. However, there's just that little factor there that maybe they can run. If they're going to do it, if they're going to make history, today would be the day to.
So it's worth watching today.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. But also, I will say as well, when you're under fire from critics, media, fans who want to know, same as you two do, why they're persisting with Bazball, send your head coach out to meet the media. Send your captain out. They sent the batting coach who didn't Marcus Trescott, I think, former England player, who didn't even have one of his charges on the pitch that day. That was a very, very sneaky thing to do. If you're going to go down this route and you're going to defend the way you're playing, and you've hit a bump in the road, defend it. They just hid. They hid last night, and that didn't play out well with. It's a media problem, I guess, but I think the fans wanted to hear from them as well.
Let's talk about the David and Ed Miliband of cycling.
I thought that myself.
Yeah.
About half an hour ago. I think these two are a little bit more successful, actually.
So this is the Tour de France.
Yes, Tour de France. Yeah, exactly. So look, we had all these discussions yesterday, didn't we, about how safety will be an issue. The race goes into France tomorrow. Look, it still could be a problem, but in the relatively serene environment of the Basque region in Spain, it started in Bilbao yesterday. Unexpectedly, we saw Britain dominate the proceedings. So UAE Team Emirates rider Adam Yates just skimmed ahead of his twin brother Simon. These two lads
so
are
they're
from
twins and they're both in the Tour de France.
Yeah, playing with
different
teams though. Yeah, they're from Bury.
Wow.
They're from Bury in Greater Manchester, and that shows actually. It was always said when the velodrome was set up there 10, 12 years ago, whenever it was, we thought we would produce. It was hoped that we would produce riders from local area, and these two have certainly come through that system. And as I say, it was a sprint. It was exciting. But we are talking about the cycling today, and that's so important because, as I say, there will be problems ahead. They go into France tomorrow, but this is an international event. It's a stellar event. It deserves more than to be disrupted, by the problems in France at the moment, but also by the climate protesters who we didn't see yesterday. But as I say, we've got motorbikes riding in front of them, as I mentioned, and they're going to see if there's any danger ahead. But at the moment, we are at least talking about the cycling, which I think is great.
And it's Adam who beat his twin brother Simon.
Yes.
So Adam's in the yellow jersey.
That's right, yeah.
Brit in the yellow jersey.
I know.
Lovely.
So they're both 30, so they're not spring chickens in cycling terms, but they will have come through the local system in Manchester.
Yes, they will. It just shows that
it does work. Yeah, exactly.
You build the resources that, in the end, the talent comes.
Absolutely, yeah. It's taken a little while, but we are seeing it, of course, yeah. And then, of course, we've got England under-21s in action. Football's not really on the agenda at the moment, but which makes a change. But the England head coach Lee Carsley is taking England into the under-21 semi-final today. It's in Georgia. And this is interesting because Gareth Southgate was the manager of the under-21s. He was very keen when he came in that the under-21s wouldn't just be like a ceremonial team that would just play now and again. No one would pay much attention to it. He wants players to graduate from that team into the first team, and they play the same way. They've got the same setup, same formation, and they've got some fantastic players in there. Harvey Elliott of Leicester, Emile Smith-Rowe of Arsenal, Curtis Jones of Liverpool, of course. So you're going to see a few of those in action today in the semi-final, and they should go on and win it. Yeah.
Was that first one we just saw? Was that with his little moustache?
Little moustache. Don't know who that is. Can we see him again? Maybe.
Oh, put it back up. Give it up. Sebastian's trying to wind back the tape. Got it on a fast rewind. Because I wonder. I'll tell you why I ask.
Like moustaches.
No, I don't. This fella, who's he?
Anthony Gordon. That's right. Anthony Gordon plays for Newcastle United. He got a big move last January. He played for Everton previously.
With his little tash, it's becoming very popular amongst young men to have a moustache. It reminds me of the 70s. Don't like it.
Don't like it either.
Don't like it. I think it ages people a bit, doesn't it?
Well, that's why they do it, though.
I suppose so, yeah, maybe.
He's
had a bit of a makeover,
To
Anthony
prove
Gordon.
they can do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's why I don't like it, because I still couldn't grow a moustache. I'm hopeless. Absolutely. I get a bit of a beard underneath, but it's white now, so what's the point?
Terrible, isn't it?
It's white, yeah. Right.
Andy Murray's in action on Tuesday. We know that now.
Oh, right. Tuesday, is it?
Yes,
Great.
indeed, against Ryan Penniston.
Lovely. What do you do you've got your stubble? What do you use to dye your stubble?
Just for men.
Do you really?
I do, yeah.
You dye your stubble?
Not today, I haven't. But sometimes I do. Yeah, because it goes. Mine's actually white.
Yeah.
My dad went grey at 16.
How do you do that without dyeing your skin?
You just have to wash it off very thoroughly afterwards. I don't do it all the time. I just do it now and again. Sometimes it can look a bit overcaked. But you can get pens. You can get pens and actually fill in gaps and things like that. My friend's got one of those. I won't say who he is because he's on television.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But he's very proud of his pen. His sister brought him for Christmas, and it means he always had a gap around about a patch around about there.
You just fill it in.
And he fills it in. Yeah, I didn't know until he told me. I mean, I'm the last person you want to tell if you want to keep any decency around you. I've just announced it on television.
Yeah, it's very hard being a man, Anne.
Dye your chin.
Good damn it, That's the point. If I ever come in with any facial hair now, you'll know I've dyed it.
Well, we'll know now, yes.
Yeah, there you go. So I've blown it. That's another one. Aidan, thank you very much.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. We've got the Sunday papers heading away in just a moment. This is Breakfast on GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
.28, good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Let's look through the front pages, should we?
Here's the Mail on Sunday there. Their splash reads, Woke Met ban badge tribute to fallen officers. That's police who've been banned from wearing a blue Union Jack symbol, which bosses claim is anti-trans.
The Sunday Express is reporting on taxpayers' cash being used to fund open border activists. The headline, Rwanda scheme foiled by £1.5 billion of your money.
And the Daily Star is talking about boozed-up hornets on the rampage. Britain apparently are facing an invasion of alcoholic Asian hornets.
Front page of the Sunday Times has a picture of a French waiter putting out a fire during the ongoing riots there.
And in the Sunday Telegraph, George gets a slice of the action at Lord's, along with the Prime Minister and his father. That's little Prince George there, having a slice of pizza.
Good on him. Let's go through those papers in a bit more detail then with editor of Spike, Tom Slater, and political consultant Emma Burnell. Good to see you both. Let's kick off with Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Tom, in the Sunday Telegraph?
Well, apparently the American publishing house Vintage is afraid of Virginia Woolf. They've added one of these trigger warnings, one of these disclaimers that we keep seeing slapped on all kinds of different authors, particularly to The Lighthouse, Virginia Woolf's 1927 novel. It reads, this book was published in 1927 and reflects the attitudes of its time. Apparently, they're doing this with pretty much every old book that they're putting out. There's also an Ernest Hemingway book, which has apparently been slapped with the same warning. And just this constant, really patronising, kind of Philistine, I think, attempt to constantly try and warn people about particular novels. What's interesting about this one is, as try as they might, no one can work out what attitudes it is that they're actually talking about. This particular story is about a kind of family holiday, effectively.
But if you're going to read Woolf or Hemingway, you sort of know that already, don't you?
I mean, the idea that people who were writing almost a century ago might not have been completely up to speed with our views on all kinds of various social issues. I think most people know that, and yet what worries me about this is it's kind of encouraging people to always approach anything that was written more than 5 minutes ago with a kind of sense of caution, which surely is going to, in some ways, close people off from what could be really brilliant reads for them. And it's just the fact that it's now almost a blanket measure, I think, shows you how bad it is.
Well, we should try and get the view of Emma Woolf on that one, who so often does our papers.
Yes,
she's her, I don't know, his granddaughter or great niece or something or other. Yeah.
I mean, the problem with this is there are books that if you have them as a set text, for example, and I'm thinking about The Clockwork Orange, brilliant book. Absolutely everybody should read it. It's quite hard work to read because a lot of it is written in a slightly odd language. Or The Handmaid's Tale. I did The Handmaid's Tale at A-level. It's one of the best books I've ever read. I adore it. But it covers incredibly dark topics.
Yes.
What the problem with these trigger warnings is, for me, is that they're on everything, so they're on nothing, really.
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're not going to be... If they're so ubiquitous, then people just start skipping past them rather than thinking about, OK, I'm going to approach this book in a particular way because I'm aware of what the topics it's covering are. So it doesn't feel like it's helpful to the people it purports to be trying to help.
It's better than editing words out, though, isn't it?
I think it's definitely an improvement upon that. But one thing that I think is worth saying about trigger warnings as well is that the psychological literature, and there's been a lot of writing about this, suggests that even for people who have like PTSD and so on, this kind of cotton wool approach is not necessarily useful either. So, as ever, these things come in with good intentions, but I think the upshot of it is just to encourage people to be very wary about reading books, which is surely not a good thing to happen,
No. Well, I'd pick up something with a trigger warning, just...
Yes, but
Just
you'd read the book then, trying to figure out why or...
Can you imagine the trigger warnings on a Jilly Cooper or a Jackie Collins?
You've got to hope it's extremely triggering. Otherwise, I may write to the publisher and complain.
Yes, this didn't offend me at all.
I wasn't triggered enough by this book. Emma, it's the Sun on Sunday, looking at France.
Yeah, I think it's the 5th day of violence and riots. I think over 1,000 people have been arrested. It may be slowing down, but it doesn't appear to be stopping.
Not much, apparently, then.
And there are... there are two stories here. There's the current very, very violent and scary situation in France and what may happen in order to try to quell that. There are the longer-running stories of long-running tensions between the French police, which have often been extremely heavy-handed, in particular when it comes to ethnic minority communities. And that's been a huge, long-running sore in French society for quite some time. And what I hope is that instead of simply reacting in a give the police loads more powers, enforce, they also do a bit of sort of longer-term thinking about how to turn that around, because otherwise these kind of the triggering events, the shooting of a teenage boy, are just going to keep happening.
Yeah, it's certainly got to be looked at. We're talking about protesters a lot this morning and these new rules and regs. And oddly enough, we were just saying, weren't we, this morning, what about Swampy?
Yeah.
Well, he's 50 now.
Can you remind us who Swampy was?
Yes, so Swampy is. He's 50 now, as you say. He's real name Daniel Hooper. He was a very active environmental campaigner, particularly in the 90s. He still is to this day, but he first kind of shot to prominence, of course, when he was tunnelling underneath roads.
The Newbury bypass.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So this was his kind of claim to fame. Interestingly, he's given an interview with the Sunday Times, and he's kind of distanced himself from Just Stop Oil and some of the more disruptive activist groups. So whilst he was obviously disruptive in his own way in his time, suggesting that he wouldn't sit himself down in the middle of the road, that it is actually putting people off. He's joined a new organisation which is aimed to try and bring people from different kind of parts of society together.
It's hard when Swampy is the voice of reason.
Well, this is it, and we've had Swampy come out and criticise this. We've also had some of the funders of Just Stop Oil in the past week come out and suggest that maybe this isn't working. Everyone's kind of tiring of these tactics, apart from the activists themselves, who seem still pretty committed to it, even though it does seem to turn everyone off.
I mean, I think the difference is Swampy was actually taking direct action against the thing he was against.
Yes.
Whereas interrupting, the snooker or the cricket or what have you,
or the Chelsea Flower
Show, is,
or a delivery
it's like
guy
we were saying.
Go to work or whatever.
It's like we've said about a number of things this morning. You have to join too many dots. It doesn't make the kind of direct sense that Swampy's direct action took.
They become protests against the public.
Yeah.
And you wonder why people get upset about
and then, a public that you're supposed to be trying to persuade. The reason to have these protests, the prima facie argument is we want to raise the profile of the issue. But unfortunately, and I think what Swampy's alluding to is you're not raising the profile of an issue in a way that's getting people to come along with you.
I mean, he was, in his own right, very disruptive, and the actions that were illegal, and he got arrested and all the rest of it, but he was getting in the way of the diggers sort of thing, and not the ambulance.
Not ordinary people trying to go to work.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating,
Funny,
though,
isn't it, when people mature?
Yes. Funny that, isn't it? funny, that. How we go from that to Sex and the City, I
Well,
don't
it's
know,
about
but let's
being
try.
mature.
It's about being 50, isn't it?
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So this story, very positive for me because I'm 48, says that your sex life does not have to slow down or change when you go over 50.
It doesn't have to, maybe just slightly less bothered.
Well, apparently not. This is the myth. The myth of the menopause is that it kills your sex drive stone dead. Actually, that apparently is not always true. Plenty of women are having a very active sex life. And the reason that this has been tied to the Sex and the City reboot, they've gone into the second series of And Just Like That. And the opening montage is all four of them having different kinds and very enjoyable sex lives.
Moments, yes. Oh, I'll get them tuning in.
Never liked Sex and the City
Didn't
at all.
you? I used to watch it and like it back in the... Was it the 90s?
Yeah, it was a big 90s show, wasn't it? Yeah.
And it was very much of its time and seemed very exciting and all the rest of it, but made everyone want to drink Cosmopolitans, I seem to remember.
Having a Cosmopolitan in New York is a
Yes.
thing that you do now when you go to New York because
Yeah.
of Sex and the City, definitely.
Yeah.
It's been an incredibly successful franchise, hasn't
Absolutely,
it?
yeah.
And it is quite fascinating, again, seeing the actresses as they're older and the script writing that goes with that.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what this is addressing, I guess.
Yes. No, I don't know what else to say about that one.
No.
The Sun on Sunday, Tom, we're avoiding taking our pets to the vets.
Yeah, so 2/3 of pet owners are putting off taking their pets to the vets, obviously cost of living crisis, concerns about the expense, and also resorting to some quite, dare I say, kind of reckless attempts to make up for that by, for instance, giving animals human medicine. A third have done so.
You shouldn't do that.
You know, also self-diagnosing your own pets. I mean, I get that things are difficult out there, but you're not just going to be able to work out by having a look at them what might be ailing them.
No.
It's another reminder, though, about how all kinds of things can go haywire when people are faced with the
Well, and you've got no
prices
choice. You have to pay a vet. Vets are private.
Exactly.
And it can be a huge problem.
And of course, there was a big explosion in pet ownership during the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many more dogs around that you see now because people got so, and having come from that into this cost of living crisis, a lot of people are suddenly picking up bills that they weren't expecting.
Yeah. I tell you what, vets always complain about, I've seen it on various things, is a number, it's why you don't want to self-diagnose, a number of people who take their male dogs or cats to the vet complaining that they've got big ticks.
Oh, I've heard about this.
And how do you get rid of these ticks, these awful ticks that my pet has got? And they go through and they go, no, it hasn't got any ticks. Yes, it has. Nipples.
What? They think nipples are ticks?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like a cat and a dog, a male dog, they have 6 or 8 nipples, whatever, like. They always think... It's a thing with vets. They always say they always have people in complaining that their male pet has got ticks and it's just nipples.
Good Lord. For heaven's sake.
So you can imagine people buying...
Well, I'm glad they didn't try and get rid of the ticks.
No.
Yeah.
Well, this is what you wonder what they do if they're self-diagnosing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Yes, very much ouch. Poor dogs.
Screws, my Uncle Bob used to call them.
Screws.
Screws. We grew up calling our nipples screws because we're from a shipbuilding background, right?
Well, that doesn't excuse
no,
it.
No, we do because my granddie worked in the shipyard. His dad worked in the shipyard and all the rest of it. And so we just grew up in Barrow and everything. It was all very industrial. So he just thought that if you had any surgery or anything, that they were your screws and they had to unscrew them to get your chest off.
Oh.
And so we grew up just calling them screws.
You are watching Breakfast on or if you're listening on the radio, you're still with us, even though it feels slightly surreal this morning.
But don't you think that's quite nice? I've always thought it was really cool. That's how you get your chest off, you unscrew.
But our parents do give us weird things to grow up with.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean...
Sorry, Bob. It's his birthday yesterday.
My father always used to be very proud to tell us, how do you tell a butterfly from a moth?
Oh, I don't know.
And I said this in school because this is what he always said. He said, moths have bulbs on the end of their antennae. And my teacher said, bulbs? My father, they have little, round things on the end of their antenna where butterflies don't. That was the thing. But when I said that they had bulbs on the end of their antenna, the whole class fell apart because they were thinking light bulbs, weren't they?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's what I'm saying. Sometimes your parents use odd words.
My father reminded me of a family saying that we always used to do is how many beans make 5? Did with that?
No.
Saying, 2 beans, a bean and a half a bean and a bean.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
So how many
beans make 5? 2 beans, a bean and a half a bean and a bean.
But what's the point of that?
I've no idea. It's just one of those little rhymey things,
isn't it?
Yeah, I'm still trying to add that up.
Do you want me to do Spike's accounts for you?
Yeah, please do. I'm worried now.
Well, I suppose you'd be a bean counter.
Yeah, there you go. Very good.
Now, Sunday Mirror, with the headline, "Lousy leader doesn't even live in real world."
Who could that be?
Who are they talking
Narrow
about?
it down for us.
Yes. Speaking of bean counters, Rishi Sunak appears to know the value of everything, or the cost of everything, the value of nothing. There are big changes happening to student fees that will increase people's debt for a very, very long time, reduce the amount of money that universities get. And he was heard saying in a private meeting during his leadership contest against Liz Truss that they were going to reduce this costing to universities, which didn't matter because students don't vote Tory, which is not really how you should lead a country.
No, but
No.
they have a point.
No, it's a bit of a worrying... It is a little bit... You can't work on that basis.
You absolutely can't work on that basis.
Do we need to get to the point, though, and I say this as someone who went to a new university, Nottingham Trent, which was Nottingham Poly. It changed in the year I started there, in '92. Do we need to reduce the number of universities, reduce the number of people going to university? So, A, we can fund it through the state, and B, other people are actually not getting useless degrees and are just going on apprenticeships and earning as they're learning and getting good jobs.
So we always say this, and we always have this conversation, and I heard a very good anecdote the other day from a Labour MP who, a Tory MP, was saying exactly this, and she Googled him while he was speaking. Went, and which of the 3 of your children would you like not to go to university? Turns out, of course, they were all there. And the problem is if we do that, what we're going to do is start only sending the very middle class to university again.
Why would that be? Wouldn't you
Because
say,
they're the ones
well, I
who
wasn't
are
very middle
brought up.
class.
No, but
I mean, I got a grant to go to university.
Exactly. So the problem is, when you reduce it down, the people who are going to lose out are not the people who are, the ones that are getting... Now, I think there's a great deal of value to going to university beyond simply the academic thing. It's that really interesting safety net cushion between leaving home properly and going into the workplace. I got a great deal more than just my degree out of my degree.
Yeah, but people shouldn't be spending £9,000 a year plus everything else on the safety net.
But in terms of growing up and the ways that you grow up, it brings you an awful lot more than just the academic side. No, the academic side is essential and important. I don't disagree with you. We should have more routes into things like apprenticeships and value those much higher. And if that was if we went that way round, so that we actually made apprenticeships much more valuable, much more valued, then we might not see those academic routes being completely hogged by the sharp-elbowed middle class. And that might be the best way to do it.
I mean, I never went to university, but I did an apprenticeship for a newspaper. And that was as much of an education and... An education, but also an experience. It was tremendous fun, learning on the job. We went on block release to college as well to learn some of the basics. But and there were a bunch. I wasn't the only one. There were there were a couple of others. So
but those good apprenticeships are quite. Some of them are brilliant. The Rolls-Royce apprenticeship scheme is literally the Rolls-Royce of apprenticeship schemes, but some of them are less so, and we're seeing a lot of abuse of the system.
They have been neglected because there was this push to get almost everyone into university, and I think that was always the big mistake. You had people going to university who might have been better suited to going into, you know, if you end up with a kind of useless degree that you're now heavily in debt for, no one really benefits from that whatsoever.
No, because it's not actually increasing your earning potential or anything else anymore, is it?
No, and you're not necessarily learning that much either. You're not.
And the
going,
dropout rate is high too.
It's indeed, and
People go to university because they feel they have to. And then it's not what they want.
that really sets people back, I think, when they kind of feel compelled to go, but then actually it's a mismatch for them. And also, as a consequence of this, we've just ended up with a society which is only really placing certainly kind of cultural value on people who go to university.
But that's why I say that what we need to do first is change the way that we view apprenticeships.
Yeah, it is that point. If you haven't been to university, you're looked down on rather than being sort of looked up on if you have been.
Absolutely,
sort of thing.
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And just making sure that we have different routes into the workplaces. You know, too many jobs that could be done by non-graduates are only now graduate jobs.
Yeah.
And too many... but there is also, I remember when the big degree that everyone said no one should be studying was media studies.
Yeah.
Actually, there is very little that's more important in the world that we live in with misinformation and disinformation than understanding a bit about how the media works.
Yeah, I think people go into media studies for the wrong thing.
Yeah.
That's quite possibly true. They think they're going to be you, Stephen.
Well, people do. They think it's a way to get into it, which is why they set up the degree that I did, which was broadcast journalism, to actually get into journalism.
No, and I did a master's in journalism, but I did it 20 years after I did my first degree.
Oh, right.
But, it was great, actually, going back and studying properly, as opposed to the way I did when I was a teenager.
Yeah. But it was difficult, wasn't it, going back?
I did it at Birkbeck, which is an evening university, so I could do it around working, and it was brilliant. And I remember saying to my course leader, I said, I'm that mature student that all the 19-year-olds hate. And he said, what do you mean? I said, well, I do all the reading.
Yeah. So what did you do, Tom?
I did English literature at Sussex. But it's funny because we do, at Spike, we're involved with basically a kind of summer school programme for state school kids in London to come through into journalism. And the one thing they always ask is, what degree do I need to do? What degree do I need to do? And it's always the point is you don't need to do a degree. The number one thing is actually getting out there and getting the experience.
Yeah.
That's the thing that will actually secure you future employment. But there is this tendency, even with something like the media, where they assume it has to be a graduate profession. Not necessarily. Although there are, as you were suggesting, broadcast journalism courses, NCTJ.
Well, there are, but, you know, I mean, and I've done very well out of that degree, and I loved it. I had a great time, and it did open some doors. But where I got most of my experience was, you know, from 18 onwards, getting up at the crack of dawn and going into Trent FM to write bits of copy for the team there and doing all that. And that's where I got my experience, because I didn't go out the weekends, I just went to work.
Yeah, that's the way to do it, I think.
That's the way to do it, yeah. Anyway, if you've got any experiences you want to share, let us know, gbviews@gbnews.com. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Tom. Good to see you this morning. Now, actually, talking of education and how to handle it all and what best education you can get, there's been this huge concern over what went on in schools with asbestos. It's a terrifying thing, and how long it's been going on for, I don't know. I remember it being ripped out of my secondary school when I was there back in the early 90s. But thousands of pupils and staff have apparently been killed by exposure to asbestos in schools, with children still being taught in buildings riddled with the lethal material.
Yes, the Sunday Times has revealed 10,000 people have died because of asbestos exposure in schools since the 1980s.
And there are fears children and teachers are still being exposed, with more than 20,000 schools across the country still containing some asbestos.
Well, joining us now is Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. And a very good morning to you. This is really shocking about asbestos in schools. I think most of us thought that it had been got rid of years ago. What about you?
Yeah, it is truly shocking. I mean, the scale of the challenge right across the schools estate, asbestos absolutely, but just the poor condition of so many schools. We had a report just last week from the National Audit Office that laid bare just how bad things really are. What I've been saying now for months is that the government need to publish the full data associated with all of this, because at the moment parents just don't have a full understanding of what's going on, and I think the government should come clean about the scale of the challenge in terms of what we're facing in our schools. We haven't had a decent school rebuilding programme since Labour was last in government, and that means there is an ongoing backlog of work. And frankly, sometimes where money is being spent, we can't be confident it's being spent in the areas of greatest need, because the government won't tell us what they are and where they are.
I mean, the problem with all of this, right, and it's a legitimate problem, doesn't help the situation, is it's down to cost, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what it costs to build a school, never mind replace or sort out 20,000 schools. And whether Labour would find the money or not is a question as well, because you've already said that you want to give teachers money as an incentive to stop them quitting, which would cost 50 million quid a year. I mean, that may or may not be a good idea, but it's an extra bill on top of everything else, isn't it?
I mean, the scale of the challenge that we see right across education is tremendous. That's because for the last 13 years we haven't had a government that's been focused on education, both in terms of driving up standards and also making sure our children go to school in really world-class facilities. I do believe it's important that we raise the status and standing of teaching once more. That's why I'm setting out Labour's plans around incentive payments for new teachers when they've completed their 2 years of training. But where it comes to the schools estate, the last Labour government had a Building Schools for the Future programme that transformed schools right across our country. We haven't had anything similar from the government in recent years, and frankly sometimes it feels like we're patching up problems rather than often spending money just to patch up an existing problem, whether that's a roof or drainage issues, rather than dealing with some of the fundamentals. And I'm not sure that represents particularly good value for money, but I mean, the economic situation facing the country is pretty tough, and the incoming Labour government, if we win the trust of the British people, will face lots of challenges right across our education system, but I'm confident we can rise to that as we've done before.
Tell us more about this incentive payment. How would it work?
So for early career teachers, so for our new teachers, when they've completed their early career framework, when they finish those 2 years, they would then receive a retention payment at the end of that. The single biggest way that we make sure that children get really great outcomes and get a great start in life in school is through high quality teaching. And right now at the moment we face a recruitment and retention crisis across the profession. People are leaving teaching in their droves. 1 in 5 new teachers leave within the first couple of years. And that's why I believe it's absolutely essential that we address that, but also that we recognise the professionalism of teachers and we make it the go-to place for graduates.
What's to stop them taking £2,400 off the government, thanks very much indeed, and then quitting the next week?
The evidence points to it being an effective means of keeping people in the profession, but alongside that we've got a very complicated landscape of different kind of bursaries and payments that run alongside that too, so I want to see that all brought together in one simple framework that actually just brings a greater degree of clarity to it. But there are other changes I believe that we need to see alongside this too. What teachers will tell me is that often they're dealing with lots and lots of problems way beyond what they feel always comfortable doing. So the growing crisis we see around mental health in our young people, that's why we've got plans to make sure we've got better mental health support too, so that teachers can focus on what they've come into teaching to do, and that's delivering a brilliant education for our children.
OK, Bridget Phillipson, we've got to leave it there, but really good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Love to know your thoughts on that. Would it work? Maybe it should be tied into a contract.
Yeah, like dentists.
Well, dentists, yeah. You know, you get your 2,400, but you've got to keep working for another 2 years. I don't know.
Would that put people off?
Maybe. But let us know your thoughts. gbviews@gbnews.com. Here's your weather.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it certainly remains changeable for most of us. Wettest conditions generally in the north, and that's all down to this area low pressure, which is not going to go very far over the next few days. And note the tightly packed isobars, indicating it's going to be a fairly blustery day across the northern half of the country today. So a little bit more detail this morning. Quite a bright start across the south, but the cloud will bubble up here as the day goes on, limiting the sunshine a little bit. But for northern areas, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Exception, Orkney and the far north of Scotland here. The rain's going to persist for much of the day. But for Shetland, certainly a better day than Saturday here with a mixture of sunny spells and showers. In the sunshine across the south, highs reaching around 22, possibly 23 degrees. So feeling fairly pleasantly warm. Into the evening, very little changes across the south. Quiet end to Sunday with some late spells of sunshine. Further north, continuing the risk of some further showers, and again, still that rain persisting across the very far north of Scotland. And under the clear skies for most of us, be a little bit fresher than of late, but still generally remaining in double figures across most towns and cities. So we start Monday morning across many parts of England and Wales on a fairly bright note, but this area of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Ireland will gradually spread its way eastwards as the day goes on. Still that rain across the very far north of Scotland too, so really into the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine down towards southeastern England, maybe some southern parts of Scotland too, and in any sunshine, temperatures just climbing into the low 20s. Then looking ahead to Tuesday and Wednesday, and really very little changes, still going to be dominated by that area low pressure. So a mix of sunny spells and showers, majority of the showers across the northern half of the country, and temperatures for most of us around average for the time of year.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast, whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good morning, it's 9 o'clock on Sunday the 2nd of July. Today, new measures to crack down on disruptive activists. Police now have the powers to stop static demonstrations like slow walk protests.
Kate steps up to the plate with reports the Princess of Wales is the new steely operator inside Buckingham Palace.
And it's a big weekend for space fans. The Euclid telescope has been launched on a million-mile journey to map the dark universe. That's all about dark matter and dark energy. We'll talk to Andy Lound later on this hour.
And as always, we'll bring you the latest weather.
Good morning. We saw a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers yesterday. What does the second half of the weekend have in store? Find out in a little bit.
Good morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
OK, we've been talking cats and dogs this morning because I'm getting a dog and I have a cat.
A Ridgeback.
I say I keep saying I
Yeah,
do
it's we,
apologise.
isn't it?
It's
Yeah.
we.
Yeah.
It's not all about me, obviously. In fact, it's nothing about me because I'm not the one who wears the trousers in our house.
But you are going to take the dog for a walk.
Oh, yeah.
You'll have to because it's a big dog.
It's a big dog. It's a
But the big
Ridgeback.
question all morning has been, how is Timmy going to take it? And Timmy is Stephen's cat, of course.
Now, and we've been told it shouldn't be a problem at all. So we wanted to know...
We're getting lots of advice from our viewers who think it might be a problem, at least a bit more of one than you think.
Yes, I don't know, because where's that lovely one about Ridgebacks? Which I can't now find, because... Oh, here we go. Ruthie, we had a Ridgeback called Sky. They are very gentle, loving dogs, easy to train and return your love tenfold. We're now 74 and we would love another. See, there you go. That's the sort of message I want.
Yeah, but that's nothing to do with Timmy, is it?
No, but
sure the
cats
dogs
and
are.
dogs get on very well. See, Thelma in Cobham's been in touch. Morning, Thelma. And she says, this is Polly the Bengal and Charlie the Cav. And look at those two together. You see, they're thick as thieves.
They are. And then Pat and Sue in mid-Wales say, look at these. They are... Oh, God, the dog's got his arm around the cat.
Yes, yes.
They are Phoebe, the tortie, and her toy boy, Archie, the Rottweiler.
See, you'd never think Rottweiler with cats, would you?
No, you really wouldn't. But she cleans his ears, does his eyes, and cuddles up to him at night.
You see, that's what you want. Moya says this is Pushkin. Oh, beautiful cat. I rescued him as a kitten. He's a beautiful, gentle boy.
And Michelle says, good morning. Here is the dog and duck combination. You've got a duck.
Yes.
How lovely is that?
So it's Rossetti...
Is the duck.
Is the duck.
And Poppy is the dog. And they're very good friends, apparently.
See, there you go, you see. Love is all around. You could make a song out of that.
Yeah, you could. I'd love a duck. A duck would be
Would you
nice.
like a dog?
Yeah. Ducks are lovely, aren't they?
Well, they are nice. I don't know about having one in the house.
Well, no, not in the house. In the garden.
But there you go. There you go.
Get my dog.
So there you go. So it will all be fine. And bear in mind, though, that Timmy has been the #1 priority in all of this to check he'll be fine. So it's going to be fine. It's just the dog's going to be...
Big.
Massive thing. I'll bring him in one of the days when he's old enough.
Yeah, OK. We bring him in when he's a gorgeous, lovely puppy.
Well, even the puppies are...
Really?
Big. Oh, yeah.
You're asking for trouble. You're asking for trouble. He doesn't get it till September, though. There's plenty of time to rethink.
Oh, no, there's no rethinking going on. It's going to be lovely. Looking forward to it. There you go. So keep your thoughts and pictures coming through GBviews at gbnews.com.
Now, new measures to crack down on disruptive protest tactics come into force today, including an expansion of police powers and a new criminal offence of tunnelling.
Yeah, authorities will have powers to disperse static protests. It's a common tactic that groups like Insulate Britain, Animal Rising or Just Stop Oil keep using.
So earlier on, we spoke to former Scotland Yard detective Peter Blexley.
These laws, sadly, are a reflection upon the liberal, fluffy and woke police leadership, which has, quite frankly, not used existing powers and has allowed protest groups to cause so much disruption by the slow walking and other tactics. If the police were more robust and they used the existing laws, then the Home Secretary would not be forced into a corner and would not have to bring about these new laws, which are simply designed to make the police do their job.
The trouble is, some of these, the way protesters are protesting nowadays, they've thought it through. It makes the police look stupid and unable to do their jobs properly, doesn't it? It actually makes them a laughingstock.
Yes, but there is so much existing legislation that very simple laws, such as behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, which could be used if the police leadership was stronger, was more robust, and was actually on the side of every working man and woman in the country. For example, this slow walking, which has been a plague upon our major cities, particularly London. There is a raft of public order legislation, behaviour likely to cause a breach of the peace, loads of laws which, if the police had done their job and got rid of these people out of the roads so that people could go about their daily business, then there would be no need for these new laws. But the police have simply failed us all. So the Home Secretary has had to do something, and so we see these new laws coming into power today.
What I don't understand, Peter, with all of this, and you see it with various... We've seen protests where people are getting pints of milk in supermarkets and pouring them on the floor, or, as you say, walking in front of vehicles very slowly. If we did that as individual members of the public, we'd just be carted off, wouldn't we? I mean, you get arrested on the spot, so I don't understand why, if you're a protest group, you somehow get away with it.
But you've hit on such an important point, and this is where the police have been repeatedly failing us. But today, it might be a pint of milk, it might be a milkshake that is thrown over a protester, but I don't want these things to escalate. What might be a milkshake today could turn out to be, for example, and I dread the thought, but it could be battery acid tomorrow, and so things could escalate.
Now, it's been a bad news week for the NHS, with a record number of staff apparently leaving because of stress and working conditions.
But the Prime Minister has announced his historic workforce plan, which he hopes will save the ailing health service. But will it just be another sticking plaster?
Yeah, and amidst all of this, we now have a minister saying Tory MPs are going to be leaving the party in droves ahead of the next election. Let's find out what Camilla Tominey thinks about all of this.
Morning.
Good morning to you.
Lovely to see you both.
Well, it has been actually quite a historic week with the NHS, with this 15-year plan. I mean, that is quite something.
It's been a long time coming as well, and it's meant to mark the 75th anniversary of the NHS. I think the trouble is, from GB News viewers and listeners' perspective, is there is no immediacy to sorting out the NHS's problems. So there's a 7.4 million waiting list. It's a throwback to COVID, of course, but equally, I don't think everybody was entirely satisfied with the service before COVID even struck. I'm going to have Steve Barclay on the show. He's the Health Secretary, and ask him, is it enough to be doing this plan and be pouring ever more increasing sums into the system without actually looking at root and branch reform? You know, people have got criticisms, I think, legitimately, of the fact that there are too many middle managers. We heard from a consultant quite recently who gave an interview where he said in order to treat one patient, he had to input different details into different log-on systems 7 times. So this NHS Digital, one wonders whether that's just oxymoronic. Where is this system that joins up all of the thinking? From a patient's perspective, we've all been there. We've all been on the phone, not able to get through to the doctor or indeed the dentist, not able to get an appointment for months on end. People with chronic conditions can't get seen. People with operations, even on cancers, are waiting for this extended period. The waiting time is meant to be, less than 18 months in 92% of cases. Currently, that 92% is down to 58%. And again, the criticism will be of Barclay and his colleagues, 13 years of Tory rule, you're doing this workforce plan now, why didn't you do it a decade ago? Have you invested enough? Doctors and nurses still striking, this is chaos. I'm also going to ask Barclay, are the PM's deliverables, his 5-point plan, is it all just doomed to failure? Half inflation, not going to happen. Bring down the debt, currently 100% of GDP. Stop the boats. No one can be sent to Rwanda. What's going on here? We've got other horror stories in the papers today about the Tories facing an electoral defeat in mid-beds. Nadine Dorries still hasn't officially stood down, but when that by-election happens, they've got a 24,000 majority, and it looks like they're going to lose that seat to Labour.
Have they been polling there, then?
Yeah, Opinium have decided that Labour could take it. I mean, I thought maybe the vote would be split between Labour and the Lib Dems, and therefore it wouldn't be a complete Labour majority there. But if you're losing mid-beds, I believe the Tories have held it since 1931. Now, I get it that people punish parties in by-elections.
But is this why, according to a Tory minister, droves are being... Well, not even said droves, has he? absolute clear out of the parliamentary party ahead of the next election.
Yeah, I mean, Frank Lunds, the elections guru, went in and spoke to the 1922 committee and said, if you're on a majority of less than 15,000, then you're in trouble.
Gosh.
So that includes people like our esteemed colleague Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg and other, pretty strident Tories. And talking of strident Tories, so we're going to also talk about Rwanda, because obviously we've had this legal challenge this week which has set back the plan to stop the boats. I'm going to be speaking to Lord Carlisle, who's one of the peers who is frustrating the government by trying to put amendments on this illegal migration bill. He doesn't want people to be deported retrospectively, and I know people will disagree with that watching and listening to this. I'm also going to be speaking to Daniel Kawczynski. He's the tallest MP in Parliament.
6'9", is he?
Yes, he's a big chap. Photographed with the PM this week.
Oh, yes.
Bit of a size differential there. But on a serious note, he's very much robustly in favour of Rwanda, so I want to hear his contrary opinions to this lord who is frustrating the process. But he says because the Home Office is a basket case. And
Does this feed into the reports that were out and about over the last couple of days saying Braverman was for the chop?
Well, why would Braverman be for the chop?
Well, I
mean,
wondered
she's
that.
a convenient kind of, bad news sponge for Rishi Sunak. Yes, he's robustly supporting the Rwanda plan, but as previous prime ministers have learned, with Priti Patel being this hate figure, that's quite convenient because they can absorb all of the noise on Twitter while you carry on, looking like you're trying to do your best and work hard behind the scenes. I mean, he's on Test Match Special yesterday, sort of still ploughing this. It's an interesting quote in the papers because this whole steady as he goes. He's meant to be steadying this ship that seems to be slowly sinking. And there was a quote in the Sunday Times along the lines of Rishi Sunak needs somebody to attach some electrodes to his testicles. And I think what that's meaning is he's got to be slightly...
It's a breakfast show.
I know it is, but he's got to use the cricket analogy, he's got to be playing political baseball rather than just being a night watchman because it's not working for him.
I can see why. However, baseball is not going very well at the moment.
That is a problem.
That is a problem. Camilla, thank you. We'll see you at 9:30.
Looking forward to it, thank you.
Right, shall we take a short break? And then afterwards we're going to be talking about the Princess of Wales. Yes, that's what she is now. Kate. She seems to be the force behind absolutely everything that's working successfully in Buckingham Palace at the moment. We'll find out why.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News weather forecast on the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it certainly remains changeable for most of us. Wettest conditions generally in the north, and that's all down to this area low pressure, which is not going to go very far over the next few days. And note the tightly packed isobars, indicating it's going to be a fairly blustery day across the northern half of the country today. So a little bit more detail this morning. Quite a bright start across the south, but the cloud will bubble up here as the day goes on, limiting the sunshine a little bit. But for northern areas, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Exception, Orkney and the far north of Scotland here. The rain's going to persist for much of the day. But for Shetland, certainly a better day than Saturday here with a mixture of sunny spells and showers. In the sunshine across the south, highs reaching around 22, possibly 23 degrees, so feeling fairly pleasantly warm. Into the evening, very little changes across the south. Quiet end to Sunday with some late spells of sunshine. Further north, continuing the risk of some further showers. And again, still that rain persisting across the very far north of Scotland. And under the clear skies for most of us, be a little bit fresher than of late, but still generally remaining in double figures across most towns and cities. So we start Monday morning across many parts of England and Wales on a fairly bright note, but this area of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Ireland will gradually spread its way eastwards as the day goes on. Still that rain across the very far north of Scotland too, so really into the afternoon, probably the best of the sunshine down towards southeastern England, maybe some southern parts of Scotland too, and in any sunshine, temperatures just climbing into the low 20s. Then looking ahead to Tuesday and Wednesday, and really very little changes, still going to be dominated by that area low pressure. So a mix of sunny spells and showers, majority of the showers across the northern half of the country, and temperatures for most of us around average for the time of year.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, SpaceX has launched the Euclid telescope on a million-mile journey. It's designed to explore and map the dark universe and monitor dark energy.
The question is, how will it know it's got there if it's so dark? Anyway, the observatory is designed to seek dark matter and energy. It's currently on its journey to the opposite side of the sun.
Let's talk to space and planetary scientist, our favourite spaceman, Andy Lown. Good morning to you, Andy. All right, here we go then. What is dark matter? What is dark energy? And how do we know if we've found any?
Good morning, both. Well, the answer to the first 2 questions is very simple. We don't know, which is why we're sending the Euclid mission. What we do know is there's something odd going on in the universe. I mean, of what we know of the universe, only 95% of it is actually invisible to us, which is composed of dark energy and dark matter. And we really need to try and understand this. As the universe expands, assumption always was it would continue expanding, slow down due to the force of gravity, and then collapse on itself. The Hubble telescope actually showed that's not the case. It reaches a point where it starts to expand more quickly. It speeds up as if there's a force, a pushing force, if you like, acting against gravity, pushing the universe further away. And this has caused a great deal of a surprise. Also, if we look at galaxies, where galaxies, the billions of stars circling together in these beautiful spiral arms, if you take all the gravity and all the mass of the material inside a galaxy, it still hasn't got enough energy to hold itself together. So we don't know what the glue is that's holding the universe together. And some scientists say it's like the scaffolding that actually holds the expansion of the universe together. What's the fundamental force that's holding it all together? And we simply don't know what that is. The idea of Euclid is to go out into space, and it's a phenomenal piece of equipment because it's going to take these very wide panoramic shots of the universe, mapping the universe in 3 dimensions up to to galaxies up to 10 billion light years away. And what it's actually going to do, it's going to be such a sensitive piece of equipment that as the galaxies are photographed, you get an effect called gravitational lensing. And this is where the light coming from anything, a galaxy in particular, is bent. You can get bent by the force of gravity, but it also can be bent by dark energy, dark matter. And this is the whole point of it. If you can actually measure the distortions that are taking place on a wide scale, you should therefore be able to understand the patterns and structure of the fundamental energies behind the expansion of the universe itself. So what we're looking for, therefore, is patterns, which is what science mainly does, is look for patterns, and this is what the actual telescope is going to do. So we won't be able to see the dark matter, dark energy directly, that's not possible, but we will be able to infer it. In the same way we do with gravity. We can't see gravity directly, but we can infer the way gravity works by looking at the movement of planetary bodies or anything else for that matter. And that's what we're going to try and do here with this mission.
It's like black holes, is it then? We can't actually see black holes, but we can see the effect it's having on the universe around it.
Absolutely, that's really important, and we have to do that with a lot of these more subtle things. Is that we have to actually look for the effects and try to measure and backtrack the mathematics to work out what the object actually is purely by the effect it has on everything else around it, and that's really quite important. And what's really interesting with one of the scientists, reading some of the scientists' data on this, was quite exciting. What they said was because although they know the universe is expanding and they've measured it to a certain degree, they don't know if it's expanding equally around the whole universe. It could be different in other parts. This experiment will be able to actually define that for us better. That's important because that helps us understand the nature of the universe and how it probably formed. Everybody believes in, or many scientists support the black hole concept, the Big Bang concept, which is a dreadful term anyway, because it wasn't big, it wasn't a bang, but it's expanding from what they call the Big Bang. And this is perhaps going to bring us more details about the early nature of the universe. And that's really important. The history of the expansion of the universe could give us an indication of how the universe itself began and whether or not, of course, we're the only universe, because, of course, the effect that we're seeing from dark energy, dark matter could actually be caused by something outside our own universe, parallel universes or something like that.
But it all raises, and we're almost out of time, Andy, but it raises these mind-boggling questions as to whether the universe has a perimeter, an edge, or is, in fact, infinite. I mean, we just don't know, do we?
No, we don't, and we're the same. I mean, when bearing in mind we base all our knowledge of the universe on 5% of what is observable, you know, if you put that in a court of law, they'd throw it out. You know, there isn't enough evidence, they would say. So this is the point to try and understand what the 95% of the universe actually is.
Well, we could do with spending
good luck
a
with that,
full hour
yes.
with you. Andy, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks for having me.
As always. It's just not long enough.
No. It's interesting to see that SpaceX, as well, though, is sort of carrying on doing jobs that NASA used to do.
Well, yeah.
But they're doing it with NASA, I suppose.
Yeah,
but it's interesting seeing them play their role now.
But it's also, we talk about dark energy and dark matter. I mean, is dark matter matter? Is it?
But does it matter at all? Does it matter?
Does it matter what the matter is?
Yeah. It's not going to affect our lives.
It's like an episode of The Vicar of Dibley, this. There you go. That is it from us. Camilla Tominey is up next. We're back on Friday.
Good morning. Welcome to your GB News webcast on the Met. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to the next few days, it certainly remains changeable for most of us. Wettest conditions generally in the north, and that's all down to this area low pressure, which is not going to go very far over the next few days. And note the tightly packed isobars, indicating it's going to be a fairly blustery day across the northern half of the country today. So a little bit more detail this morning. Quite a bright start across the south, but the cloud will bubble up here as the day goes on, limiting the sunshine a little bit. But for northern areas, really, it's a mixture of sunny spells and scattered showers. Exception Orkney and the far north of Scotland here, the rain's going to persist for much of the day. But for Shetland, certainly a better day than Saturday here with a mixture of sunny spells and showers. In the sunshine across the south, highs reaching around 22, possibly 23 degrees, so feeling fairly pleasantly warm. Into the evening, very little changes across the south. Quiet end to Sunday with some late spells of sunshine. Further north, continuing the risk of some further showers, and again, still that rain persisting across the very far north of Scotland. And under the clear skies for most of us, be a little bit fresher than of late, but still generally remaining in double figures across most towns and cities. So we start Monday morning across many parts of England and Wales on a fairly bright note, but this area of cloud and outbreaks of rain across Ireland will gradually spread its way eastwards as the day goes on. Still that rain across the very far north of Scotland too, so really into the afternoon.